No one bothered as he searched streets that were neither crowded nor empty. There were more Shanshan soldiers here. The people hurried about their business with eyes down, bowing whenever soldiers passed, but the Shanshan paid them no mind. It all seemed peaceful on the surface, despite the armored Shanshan in the streets and the ships in the harbor. But Fane could sense the tension underneath. He always did well when men were tense and afraid. He came to a large house with more than a dozen soldiers standing guard before it. Fane stopped and dismounted. Except for one obvious officer, most wore armor of unrelieved black, and their helmets made him think of locusts' heads. Two leathery-skinned beasts with 3 eyes and horny beaks instead of mouths flanked the front door, squatting like crouching frogs. The soldier standing by each of the creatures had 3 eyes painted on the breast of his armor. Fane eyed the blue-bordered banner flapping above the roof, the spread-winged hawk clutching lightning bolts, and chortled inside himself. Women went in and out of a house across the street, women linked by silver leashes, but he ignored them. He knew about Damani from the villagers. They might be of some use later, but not now. The soldiers were looking at him, especially the officer, whose armor was all gold and red and green. Forcing an ingratiating smile onto his face, Fane made himself bow deeply. "My lords, I have something here that will interest your great lord. I assure you he will want to see it, and me, personally." He gestured to the square shape on his pack horse, still wrapped in the huge striped blanket in which his people had found him. The officer stared him up and down. "You sound a foreigner to this land. Have you taken the oaths?" "I obey, await, and will serve," Fane replied smoothly. Everyone he had questioned spoke of the oaths, though none had understood what they meant. If these people wanted oaths, he was prepared to swear to anything. He had long since lost count of the oaths he had taken. The officer motioned 2 of his men to see what was under the blanket. Surprised grunts at the weight as they lifted it down from the pack saddle turned to gasps when they stripped the blanket away. The officer stared with no expression on his face at the silver-worked golden chest resting on the cobblestones, then looked at Fane. "A gift fit for the Empress herself. You will come with me." One of the soldiers searched Fane roughly, but he endured it in silence, noting that the officer and the 2 soldiers who took up the chest surrendered their swords and daggers before going inside. Anything he could learn of these people, however small, might help, though he was confident of his plan already. He was always confident, but never more than where lords feared an assassin's knife from their own followers. As they went through the door, the officer frowned at him, and for a moment Fane wondered why. Of course, the beasts. Whatever they were certainly no worse than Trollocs, nothing at all beside a Murkrow, and he had not given them a second look. It was too late to pretend to be afraid of them now, but the Shanshan said nothing, only led him deeper into the house. And so Fane found himself on his face in a room bare of furnishings except for folding screens that hid its walls, while the officer told the High Lord Turok of him and his offering. Servants brought a table on which to set the chest so the High Lord would have no need to stoop. All Fane saw of them were scurrying slippers. He bided his time impatiently. Eventually there would come a time when he was not the one to bow. Then the soldiers were dismissed and Fane told to rise. He did so slowly, studying both the High Lord, with his shaven head and his long fingernails and his blue silk robe, brocaded with blossoms, and the man who stood beside him, with the unshaven half of his pale hair in a long braid. Fane was sure the fellow in green was only a servant, however great, but servants could be useful, especially if they stood high in their master's sight. A marvelous gift. Turok's eyes lifted from the chest to Fane. A scent of roses wafted from the High Lord. Yet the question asks itself, how did one like you come by a chest many lesser lords could not afford? Are you a thief? Fane tugged at his worn, none too clean coat. It is sometimes necessary for a man to appear less than he is, High Lord. My present shabbiness allowed me to bring this to you unmolested. This chest is old, High Lord, as old as the age of legends, and within it lies a treasure such as few eyes have ever seen. Soon, very soon, High Lord, I will be able to open it and give you that which will enable you to take this land as far as you wish, to the spine of the world, the Aiel Waste, the lands beyond. Nothing will stand against you, High Lord. Once I... He cut off as Turok began running his long-nailed fingers over the chest. I have seen chests such as this, chests from the Age of Legends, the High Lord said, though none so fine. They are meant to be opened only by those who know the pattern, but Ah. He pressed among the ornate whorls and bosses. There was a sharp click, and he lifted back the lid. A flicker of what might have been disappointment passed across his face. Bane bit the inside of his lip till blood came to keep from snarling. It lessened his bargaining position that he was not the one who had opened the chest. Still, all the rest could go as he had planned if he could only make himself be patient. But he had been patient so long. These are treasures from the Age of Legends, Turok said, lifting out the curled horn in one hand and the curved dagger with the ruby in its golden hilt in the other. Bane clutched his hands in fists at his sides so he would not grab the dagger. The Age of Legends, Turok repeated softly, tracing the silver script inlaid around the golden bell of the horn with the tip of the dagger's blade. His brows rose in startlement, the first open expression Bane had seen from him, but in the next instant, Turok's face was as smooth as ever. Do you have any idea what this is? The Horn of Valir, High Lord, Bane said smoothly, pleased to see the mouth of the man with the braid drop open. Turok only nodded as if to himself. The High Lord turned away. Bane blinked and opened his mouth, then, at a sharp gesture from the yellow-haired man, followed without speaking. It was another room with all the original furnishings gone, replaced by folding screens and a single chair facing a tall, round cabinet. Still holding the horn and the dagger, Turok looked at the cabinet, then away. He said nothing. But the other Shan-Chan snapped quick orders, and in moments, men in plain woolen robes appeared through a door behind the screens, bearing another table. A young woman, with hair so pale it was almost white, came behind them, her arms full of small stands of polished wood in various sizes and shapes. Her garment was white silk and so thin that Bane could see her body clearly through it. But he had eyes only for the dagger. The horn was a means to an end, but the dagger was a part of it. Turok briefly touched one of the wooden stands the girl held, and she placed it on the center of the table. The men turned the chair to face it under the direction of the man with the braid. The lower servants' hair hung to their shoulders. They scurried out with bows that almost put their heads on their knees. Placing the horn on the stand so that it stood upright, Turok laid the dagger on the table in front of it and went to sit in the chair. Bane could no longer stand it. He reached for the dagger. The yellow-haired man caught his wrist in a crushing grip. Unshaven dog! Know that the hand that touches the property of the High Lord unbidden is cut off. It is mine, Bane growled. Patience. So long. Turok, lounging back in the chair, lifted one blue lacquered fingernail, and Fane was pulled out of the way so the High Lord could view the horn unobstructed. Yours, Turok said. Inside a chest you could not open. If you interest me sufficiently, I may give you the dagger. Even if it is from the Age of Legends, I have no interest in such as that. Before all else, you will answer me a question. Why have you brought the Horn of Valir to me? Fane eyed the dagger longingly a moment more, then jerked his wrist free and rubbed it as he bowed. That you may sound it, High Lord. Then you may take all of this land if you wish, all of the world. You may break the White Tower and grind the Aes Sedai to dust, for even their powers cannot stop heroes come back from the dead. I am to sound it. Turok's tone was flat. And break the White Tower. Again, why? You claim to obey, await, and serve, but this is a land of oathbreakers. Why do you give your land to me? Do you have some private quarrel with these women? Thane tried to make his voice convincing. Patient, like a worm boring from within. My lord, my family has passed down a tradition, generation upon generation. We served the High King, Pt.9, and when he was murdered by the witches of Tarvalon, we did not abandon our oaths. When others warred and tore apart what Arthur Hawkwing had made, we held to our swearing and suffered for it, but held to it still. This is our tradition, High Lord. Handed father to son and mother to daughter, down all the years since the High King was murdered. That we await the return of the armies Arthur Hawkwing sent across the Arth Ocean. That we await the return of Arthur Hawkwing's blood to destroy the White Tower and take back what was the High King's. And when the Hawkwing's blood returns, we will serve and advise as we did for the High King. High Lord, except for its border, the banner that flies over this roof is the banner of Luther. The son, Arthur Pt.9, sent with his armies across the ocean. Thane dropped to his knees, giving a good imitation of being overwhelmed. My lord, I wish only to serve and advise the blood of the High King. Curock was silent so long that Thane began to wonder if he needed further convincing. He was ready with more, as much as was required. Finally, though, the High Lord spoke. You seem to know what none.
I gotta roll just one more and then we'll do a couple of dab pins and
the people here speak it as one rumor among
then get it started.
You know. I can see it in your eyes, hear it in your voice. I can almost think you were sent to entangle me in a trap. But who, possessing the Horn of Alir, would use it so? None of those of the blood who came with the Hyena could have had the horn, for the legend says it was hidden in this land. And surely any lord of this land would use it against me, rather than put it in my hands. How did you come to possess the Horn of Alir? Do you claim to be a hero, as in the legend? Have you done valorous deeds? I am no hero, my lord. Thane ventured a self-deprecating smile, but Curock's face did not alter. He let it go. The horn was found by an ancestor of mine during the turmoil after the king's death. He knew how to open the chest, but that secret died with him in the War of the 100 Years that rent Arthur Hawkwing's empire. So that all we who followed him knew was that the horn lay within, and we must keep it safe until the High King's blood returned. Almost could I believe you. Believe, High Lord. Once you sound the horn, do not ruin what convincing you have managed to do. I shall not sound the Horn of Alir. When I return to Shongshan, I shall present it to the Empress as the chiefest of my trophies. Perhaps the Empress will sound it herself. But, High Lord, Thane protested, you must. He found himself lying on his side, his head ringing. Only when his eyes cleared did he see the man with the pale braid, rubbing his knuckles, and realize what had happened. Some words, the fellow said softly, are never used to the High Lord. Thane decided how the man was going to die. Curock looked from Thane to the horn as placidly as if he had seen nothing. Perhaps I will give you to the Empress along with the Horn of Alir. She might find you amusing. A man who claims his family held true where all others broke their oaths or forgot them. Thane hid his sudden elation in the act of climbing back to his feet. He had not even known of the existence of an Empress until Curock mentioned her. But access to a ruler again, that opened new paths, new plans. Access to a ruler with the might of the Shongshan beneath her and the Horn of Alir in her hands. Much better than making this Curock a great king. He could wait for some parts of his plan. Softly. You mustn't let him know how much you want. After so long, a little more patience will not hurt. As the High Lord wishes, he said, trying to sound like a man who only wanted to serve. You seem almost eager, Curock said. Thane barely suppressed a wince. I will tell you why I will not sound the Horn of Alir or even keep it. And perhaps that will cure your eagerness. I do not wish a gift of mine to offend the Empress by his actions. If your eagerness cannot be cured, it will never be satisfied. For you will never leave these shores. Do you know that whoever blows the horn of Valir is linked to it thereafter? That so long as he or she lives, it is no more than a horn to any other. He did not sound as if he expected answers, and in any case, he did not pause for them. I stand 12th in the line of succession to the Crystal Throne. I kept the horn of Valir. All between myself and the throne would think I meant to be first hereafter. While the Empress, of course, wishes that we contend with one another, so that the strongest and most cunning will follow her. She currently favors her second daughter, and she would not look well on any threat to Tuan. If I sounded it, even if I then laid this land at her feet and every woman in the White Tower leashed, the Empress, may she live forever, would surely believe I meant to be more than merely her heir. Fane stopped himself short of suggesting how possible that would be with the aid of the horn. Something in the High Lord's voice suggested, as hard as Fane found it to believe, that he actually meant his wish for her to live forever. A worm moved. The Empress's listeners may be anywhere, Turok continued. They may be anyone. Juan was born and raised in the house of Aladan, and his family for 11 generations before him, yet even he could be a listener. The man with the braid half made a protesting gesture before jerking himself back to stillness. Even a High Lord or a High Lady can find their deepest secrets known to listeners, can wait to find themselves already handed over to the seekers for truth. Truth is always difficult to find, but the seekers spare no pain in their search, and they will search as long as they think there is need. They make great efforts not to allow a High Lord or High Lady to die in their care, of course. For no man's hand may slay one in whose veins flows the blood of utter Hawkwing. If the Empress must order such a death, the unfortunate one is placed alive in a silken bag. That bag hung over the side of the Tower of the Ravens, left there until it rots away. No such care would be taken for one such as you. At the court of the 9 Moons in Shondar, one such as you could be given to the Seekers for a shift of your eye, for a misspoken word, for a whim. Are you still eager? Fane managed to tremble in his knees. I only wish to serve and advise, High Lord. I know much that may be useful. This court of Shandar sounded a place where his plans and skills would find fertile. Until I sail back to Shanshan, you will amuse me with your tales of your family and its tradition. It is a relief to find a second man in this light-forsaken land who can amuse me, even if you both tell lies, as I suspect. You may leave me. No other words spoken of the girl with the nearly almost transparent robe kneel with downcast head beside the High Lord, offering a single steaming cup on a lacquered tray. High Lord, Fane said. The man with the braid, Juan, took hold of his arm, but he pulled loose. Juan's mouth tightened angrily as Fane made his deepest bow yet. I will kill him slowly. There are those who follow me. They mean to take the Horn of Valir. Dark friends and worse, High Lord. And they cannot be more than a day or two behind me. Turok took a sip of black liquid from the thin cup balanced on long-nailed fingertips. Few dark friends remain in Shanshan. Those who survive the seekers for truth meet the axe of a headsman. It might be amusing to meet a dark friend. High Lord, they are dangerous. They have Trollocs. They are led by one who calls himself Randall Thor. A young man, but vile in the shadow beyond belief, with a lying, devious tongue. In many places he has claimed to be many things. But always the Trollocs come when he is there, High Lord. Always the Trollocs come and kill. Trollocs, Turok mused. There were no Trollocs in Shanshan, but the armies of the allies. I wondered if a Rome could kill a Trolloc. I will have watch kept for your Trollocs and your dark friends, if they are not another lie. This land wearies me with boredom. He sighed and inhaled the fumes from his cup. Thane let the grimacing Juan pull him out of the room, hardly even listening to the snarled lecture on what would happen if he ever again failed to leave Lord Chiroc's presence when given permission to do so. He barely noticed when he was pushed into the street with a coin and instructions to return on the morrow. Randolph Thor was his now. I will see him dead at last, and then the world will pay for what was done to me. Giggling under his breath, he led his horses down into the town in search of an inn. Chapter 35. Steading Tofu. The river hills in which the city Kyrian stood gave way to flatter lands and forests when Rand and the others had ridden half a day, the Shinarans still with their armor on the pack horses. There were no roads where they went, only a scattering of cart tracks and few farms or villages. Baron pressed for speed, and Ingtar, grumbling constantly that they were letting themselves be tricked, that Fane would never have told them where he was really going, yet grumbling at the same time about riding in the opposite direction from Tillman Head, as if part of him believed and Tillman Head were not months away except by the way they took. Ingtar obliged her. The gray owl banner flew on the wind of their passage. Rand rode with grim determination, avoiding conversation with Baron. He had this thing to do, this duty, Ingtar would have called it, and then he could be free of Aes Sedai once and for all. Baron seemed to share something of his mood, staring straight ahead at nothing as they rode. When they finally stopped for the night at the edge of a forest, with full dark almost on them, Baron asked loyal questions about the steading. Trollocs would never enter a steading, would wolves. Loyal replied shortly that it was only creatures of the shadow that were reluctant to enter steading. And Aes Sedai, of course, since they could not resource inside of the steading, or challenge the power. The Ogier himself was the most reluctant of all to do so. The only one who seemed eager, almost desperately so. His skin looked as if he had not seen the sun in a year, and his teeth began to go hollow, though he said he felt ready to run a foot race. Baron put her hands on him for healing before he rolled into his blankets, and again before they mounted their horses in the morning. But it made no difference in how he looked. Even Huron frowned when he looked at Matt. The sun stood high on the second day when Baron suddenly sat up straight in his saddle and looked around. Beside her, Ingtar gave a start. Rand could not see anything different about the forest now surrounding him. The undergrowth was not too thick. They had found an easy way under the canopy of oak and hickory, black gum and beech, pierced here and there by a tall pine or leatherleaf, or the white slash of a paper bark. But as he followed them, he suddenly felt a chill pass through him, as though he had leaped into a waterwood pond in winter. It flashed through him and was gone, leaving behind a feeling of refreshment. And there was a dull and distant sense of loss, too, though he could not imagine of what. Every rider, as he reached that point, gave a jerk or made some exclamation. Huron's mouth dropped open, and Una whispered, "Bloody, flaming." Then he shook his head as if he could not think of anything else to say. There was a look of recognition in Baron's yellow eyes. Loyal took a deep, slow breath and let it out. "It feels good to be back in a steading." Frowning, Rand looked around. He had expected a steading to be somehow different, but except for that one chill, the forest was the same as what they had been riding through all day. There was the sudden sense of being rested, of course. Then an Ogier stepped out from behind an oak. She was shorter than Loyal, which meant she stood head and shoulders taller than Rand, but with the same broad nose and big eyes, the same wide mouth and tufted ears. Her eyebrows were not so long as Loyal's, though, and her features seemed delicate beside his, the tufts on her ears finer. She wore a long green dress and a green cloak embroidered with flowers, and carried a bunch of silver bell blossoms, as if she had been gathering them. She looked at them calmly, waiting. Loyal scrambled down from his tall horse and bowed hastily. Rand and the others did the same, if not so quickly as Loyal. Even Baron inclined her head. Loyal gave their names formally, but he did not mention the name of his steading. For a moment, the Ogier girl, Rand was sure she was no older than Loyal, studied them, then smiled. Be welcome to studying soldiers. Her voice was a lighter version of Loyal's, too, the softer rumble of a smaller bumblebee. I am Aerith, daughter of Ira, daughter of Allah. Be welcome. We have had so few human visitors since the stonemasons left Kyrian, and now so many at once. Why, we even had some of the traveling people, though of course they left when the... Oh, I talk too much. I will take you to the elders, only... She searched among them for the one in charge and settled finally on Baron. Aes Sedai, you have so many men with you and armed. Would you please leave some of them outside? Forgive me, but it is always unsettling to have very many armed humans in the studying at once. Of course, Aerith, Baron said. Ingtar will see to it. Ingtar gave orders to Uno, and so it was that he and Huron were the only Shinarans to follow Aerith deeper into the steading. Leading his horse like the others, Rand looked up as Loyal came closer, with many glances at Aerith up ahead with Varen and Ingtar. Huron walked midway between, staring around in amazement, though Rand was not sure at what exactly. Loyal bent to speak quietly. Is she not beautiful, Rand? And her voice sings. Matt snickered, but when Loyal looked at him questioningly, he said, Very pretty, Loyal. A little tall for my taste, to understand, but very pretty, I'm sure. Loyal frowned uncertainly, but nodded. Yes, she is. His expression lightened. It does feel good to
And
be
some
back
key
in
lime
the
pie
study.
this time.
Not that the longing is understand. The longing? Baron said. I do not understand, Loyal. We Ogier are bound to the steading, Baron. You said that before the breaking of the world, we could go where we wished for as long as we wished, like you humans. But that changed with the breaking. Ogier were scattered like every other people, and they could not find any of the steading again. Everything was moved. Everything changed. Mountains, rivers, even the seas. Everybody knows about the breaking, Matt said impatiently. What does it have to do with this longing? It was during the exile, while we wandered lost, that the longing first came on us. The desire to know the steading once more. To know our homes again. And then we died. Well, said sadly. More died than lived. When we finally began to find the steading again, last time, in the years of the Covenant explorations, it seemed we had defeated the longing at last. But it had changed us, put seeds in us. Now, if an Ogier is outside too long, the longing comes again. He begins to weaken, and he dies if he does not return. Do you need to stay here a while? Rand asked anxiously. There's no need to kill yourself to go with us. I will know it when it comes, Loyal laughed. It will be long before it is strong enough to cause harm to me. Why, Dollar spent 10 years among the sea folk without ever seeing a steading, and she came safely home. An Ogier woman appeared out of the trees, pausing a moment to speak with Aerith and Varen. She looked Ingtar up and down and seemed to dismiss him, which made him blink. Her eyes swept across Loyal, flicked over Huron and the Emmonsfielders before she went off into the forest again. Loyal seemed to be trying to hide behind his horse. Besides, he said, peering cautiously across his saddle after her, it is a dull life in the steading compared to traveling with 3 Taviran. You're going to start that again, Matt muttered, and Loyal spoke up quickly. 3 friends, then. You are my friends, I hope. I am, Rand said simply, and Baron nodded. Matt laughed. How could I not be friends with somebody who dices so badly? He threw up his hands when Rand and Baron looked at him. Oh, all right, I like you, Loyal. You're my friend. Just don't go on about it. Sometimes you're as bad to be around as Rand. His voice sank to a mutter. At least we're safe here in the steady. Rand grimaced. He knew what Matt meant. Here in a steady, where I can't channel. Baron punched Matt's shoulder, but looked sorry that he had when Matt grimaced at him with that gaunt face. It was the music Rand became aware
Do
of
another
first.
one or two of
Unseen
this.
flutes and fiddles in a jolly tune that floated through the trees, and deep voices singing and laughing. Clear the field, smooth it low, let no weed or stubble stand. Here we labor, here we toil, here the towering trees will grow. Almost at the same moment, he realized that the huge shape he was seeing through the trees was a tree itself, with a rigid, buttressed trunk that must have been 20 pieces thick. Gaping, he followed it up with his eyes up through the forest canopy to branches like the top of a gigantic mushroom, a good 100 paces above the ground. And beyond it were taller still. Ernst, Matt breathed. You could build 10 houses from just one of those. 50 houses. Cut down a great tree? Loyal sounded scandalized, and more than a little angry. His ears were stiff and still, his long eyebrows on his cheeks. We never cut down one of the great trees, not unless it dies, and they almost never do. Few survived the breaking, but some of the largest were seedlings during the Age of Legends. I'm sorry, Matt said. I was just saying how big they are. I won't. Boyle nodded. More Ogier appeared now, walking among the trees. Most seemed intent on whatever they were about. Though all looked at the newcomers and even gave a friendly nod or a small bow, none stopped or spoke. They had a curious way of moving, in some manner blending a careful deliberateness with an almost childlike carefree joyfulness. They knew and liked who and what they were, and where they were. They seemed at peace with themselves and everything around them. Bran found himself envying them. Few of the Ogier men were any taller than Loyal, but it was easy to pick out the older men. One and all, they wore mustaches as long as their dangling eyebrows and narrow beards under their chins. All of the younger were smooth-shaven, like Loyal. Many of the men were in their shirt sleeves and carried shovels and mattocks, or saws and buckets of pitch. The others wore plain coats that buttoned to the neck and flared about their knees like kilts. The women seemed to favor embroidered flowers, and many wore flowers in their hair, too. The embroidery was limited to the cloaks of the younger women. The older women's dresses were embroidered as well, and some women with gray hair had flowers and vines from neck to hem. People of the Ogier, women and girls for the most part, did seem to take special notice of Loyal. He walked staring straight ahead, ears twitching more wildly the further they went. Rand was startled to see an Ogier apparently walking up out of the ground, out of one of the grassy, wildflower-covered mounds that lay scattered all around the Ogier. There were windows in the mound, and an older woman standing at one apparently rolling a pie crust realized he was looking at Ogier homes. The window frames were stone, but they not only seemed natural formations, they appeared to have been sculpted by wind and water over generations. The great trees, with their massive trunks and spreading roots as thick as horses, needed a great deal of room between them, but several grew right in the town. Dirt ramps took the paths over the roots. In fact, aside from the pathways, the only way to tell town from forest at a glance was a large open space in the center of the town, around what could only be the stump of one of the great trees. Nearly 100 paces across, its surface was polished as smooth as any floor, and there were steps built up to it at several places. Brad was imagining how tall that tree had been when Aerith spoke loudly enough for them all to hear. Here come our guests. 3 human women came walking around the side of the huge stump. The youngest were carrying a wooden bowl. Aiel, Ingtar said. Maidens of the Spear. As well I did leave Masima with the others. Yet he stepped away from Varen and Aerith and reached over his shoulder to loosen his sword in its scabbard. Rand studied the Aiel with an uneasy curiosity. They were what too many people had tried to tell him he was. 2 of the women were mature, the other little more than a girl, but all 3 were tall for women. Their short-cut hair ranged from a reddish-brown to almost golden, with a narrow shoulder-length tail left long at the back. They wore loose breeches tucked into soft boots, and all their clothes were some shade of brown or gray or green. He thought the garments would fade into rock or woods almost as well as a warder's cloak. Short bows poked over their shoulders, and quivers and long knives hung at their belts, and each carried a small round shield of hide and a cluster of spears with short shafts and long points. Even the youngest moved with a grace that suggested she knew how to use the weapons she carried. Abruptly, the women became aware of the other humans. They seemed as startled at being startled as they did at the sight of Rand and the others, but they moved like lightning. The youngest one shouted, "Chinarans!" and turned to set the bowl carefully behind her. The other two quickly lifted brown cloths from around their shoulders, wrapping them around their heads instead. The older women were raising black veils across their faces, hiding everything but their eyes, and the youngest straightened to imitate them. Crouching low, they advanced at a deliberate pace, shields held forward with their clusters of spears, except for the one each woman held ready in her other hand. Ingtar's sword came out of its sheath. "Stand clear," I said. "Aerith, stand clear." Huron snatched out his sword breaker, wavered between cudgel and sword for his other hand. After another glance at the Aiel's spears, he chose the sword. "You must not," the Ogier girl protested. Wringing her hands, she turned from Ingtar to the Aiel and back. "You must not." Brand realized the heron-marked blade was in his hand. Heron had his axe half out of the loop at his belt and was hesitating, shaking his head. "Are you too crazy?" Matt demanded. His bow still slanted across his back. "I don't care if they are Aiel. They're women." "Stop this," Baron demanded. "Stop this immediately." The Aiel never broke stride, and the Aes Sedai clenched her fists in frustration. Matt moved back to put a foot in his stirrup. "I'm leaving," he announced. "You hear me? I'm not staying to let them stick those things in me, and I'm not going to shoot a woman." "The pact!" Loyal was shouting. "Remember the pact!" It had no more effect than the continued pleas from Baron and Aerith. Rand noticed that both the Aes Sedai and the Ogier girl were keeping well out of the Aiel's way. He wondered if Matt had the right idea. He was not sure he could hurt a woman, even if she was trying to kill him. What decided him was the thought that even if he did manage to reach Red's saddle, the Aiel were now no more than 30 paces away. He suspected those short spears could be thrown that far. As the women came closer, still crouching, spears ready, he stopped worrying about not hurting them and began worrying about how to stop them from hurting him. Nervously, he sought the void, and it came. And the thought floated outside it that it was only the void. The glow of Saidin was not there. The emptiness was more empty than he had ever remembered. Faster, like a hunger great enough to consume him. A hunger for more. It was supposed to be something more. Abruptly, an Ogier strode in between the two groups, his narrow beard quivering. "What is the meaning of this? Put up your weapons." He sounded scandalized. "For you!" His glare took in Ingtar and Huron, Rand and Perrin, and did not spare Matt for all his empty hands. "There is some excuse, but for you!" He rounded on the Aiel women, who had stopped their advance. "Have you forgotten the pact?" The women uncovered their heads and faces so hastily that it seemed they were trying to pretend they had never been covered. The girl's face was bright red, and the other women looked abashed. One of the older women, the one with the reddish hair, said, "Forgive us, Tree Brother. We remember the pact, and we would not have bared still, but we are in the land of the tree killers, where every hand is against us, and we saw armed men." Her eyes were gray, Rand saw, like his own. "You are in a steadying, Leon," the Ogier said gently. "Everyone is safe in the steady, little sister. There is no fighting here, and no hand raised against another." She nodded, ashamed, and the Ogier looked at Ingtar and the others. Ingtar sheathed his sword, and Rand did the same, though not so quickly as Huron, who looked almost as embarrassed as the Aiel. Aaron had never gotten his axe all the way out. As he took hands from Hilt, Rand let the void go too, and shivered. The void went, but it left behind the slowly fading echo of the emptiness all through him, and a desire for something to fill it. The Ogier turned to Baron and bowed. "Aes Sedai, I am Juan, son of Laesul, son of Loud. I have come to take you to the elders. They would know why an Aes Sedai comes among us with armed men,
and one of our own youths.
Loyal hunched his shoulders as if trying to disappear. Baron gave the Aiel a regretful look as if she wanted to talk with them, then motioned Juan to lead, and he took her away without another word or even the first look at Loyal. For a few moments, Rand and the others stood facing the three Aiel women uneasily. At least Rand knew he was uneasy. Ingtar seemed steady as a stone, with no more expression than one. The Aiel might have unveiled their faces, but they still had spears in their hands, and they studied the four men as though trying to see inside them. Rand, in particular, received increasingly angry looks. He heard the youngest woman mutter, "He is wearing a sword," in tones of mingled horror and contempt. Then the three were leaving, stopping to retrieve the wooden bowl and looking over their shoulders at Rand and the others until they vanished among the trees. "Maidens of the Spear," Ingtar muttered. "I never thought they'd stop once they veiled their faces. Certainly not for a few words." He looked at Rand and his two friends. "You should see a charge by Red Shields or Stone Dogs. As easy to stop as an avalanche."
"They would not break the pact once it was recalled to them,"
Aerith said, smiling.
"They came for Sunwood."
A note of pride entered her voice.
"We have two tree singers in Steading Tsofu. They are rare now. I have heard that Steading Shangtai has a young tree singer who is very talented, but we have two."
Loyal blushed, but she did not appear to notice.
"If you will come with me, I will show you where you may wait until the elders have spoken."
As they followed her, Baron muttered, "Sunwood, my left foot. Those Aiel are searching for he who comes with the dawn." And Matt added dryly, "They're looking for you, Rand." "For me? That is crazy. What makes you think?" He cut off as Aerith showed them down the steps of a wildflower-covered house, apparently set aside for human guests. The rooms were 20 paces from stone wall to stone wall, with painted ceilings a good 2 spans above the floor. But the Ogier had done their best, making something that would be comfortable for humans. Even so, the furniture was a little too large for comfort. The chairs tall enough to lift a man's heels off the floor, the table higher than Rand's waist. Urine, at least, could have walked erect in the stone fireplace, which seemed to have been worn by water rather than made by hands. Aerith eyed Loyal doubtfully, but he waved away her concern and pulled one of the chairs into the corner least easily seen from the door. As soon as the Ogier girl left, Rand got Matt and Perrin over to one side. "What do you mean they're looking for me? Why? For what reason?" "They looked right at me and went away." "They looked at you," Matt said with a grin, "like you hadn't bathed in a month and had doused yourself with sheep dip besides." His grin faded. "But they could be looking for you. We met another Aiel." Rand listened in growing amazement to their tale of the meeting in Kinslayer's dagger. Matt told most of it, with Perrin putting in a correcting word now and again, when he embellished too much. Matt made a great show of how dangerous the Aielmen had been, and how close the meeting had come to a fight. "And since you're the only Aiel we know," he finished, "well, it could be you. Ingtar says Aiel never live outside the waste, so you must be the only one." "I don't think that's funny, Matt," Rand growled. "I am not an Aiel." "The Amaran said you are. Ingtar thinks you are. Tam said he was sick, fevered." They had severed the roots he had thought he had, the Aes Sedai and Tam between them, though Tam had been too sick to know what he was saying. They had cut him loose to tumble before the wind, then offered him something new to hold on to. False dragon, Aiel. He could not claim those for roots. He would not. "Maybe I don't belong to anyone, but the Two Rivers is the only home I know." "I didn't mean anything," Matt protested. "It's just... Burn me, Ingtar says you are, Massima says you are, Urian could have been your cousin, and if Rion saw the dress and said she was your aunt, you'd believe it yourself." "Oh, all right. Don't look at me like that, Perrin. If he wants to say he isn't, all right. What difference does it make anyway?" Perrin shook his head. Ogier girls brought water and towels for washing faces and hands, and cheese and fruit and wine with pewter goblets a little too large to be comfortable in the hand. Other Ogier women came too, their dresses all embroidered. One by one they appeared, a dozen of them all told, to ask if the humans were comfortable, if they needed anything. Each turned her attentions to Loyal just before she left. He gave his answers respectfully, but in as few words as Rand had ever heard him use, standing with an ogier-sized wood-bound book clutched to his chest like a shield. And when they went, he huddled in his chair with the book held up in front of his face. The books in the house were one thing not sized for humans. "Just smell this air, Lord Rand," Huron said, filling his lungs with a smile. His feet dangled from one of the chairs at the table. He swung them like a boy. "I never thought most places smelled bad, but this... Lord Rand, I don't think there's ever been any killing here. Not even any hurting, except by accident." "The steading are supposed to be safe for everyone," Rand said. He was watching Loyal. "That's what the stories say, anyway." He swallowed the last bit of white cheese and went over to the ogier. Matt followed with a goblet in his hand. "What's the matter, Loyal?" Rand said. "You've been as nervous as a cat in a dog yard ever since we came here."
"It is nothing,"
Loyal said, giving the door an uneasy glance from the corner of his eye. "Are you afraid they'll find out you left steading Shanghai without permission from your elders?" Loyal looked around wildly, the tufts on his ears vibrating.
"Don't say that," he hissed. "Not where anyone can hear. If they found out..."
With a heavy sigh, he looked back, looking from Rand to Matt.
"I don't know how humans do it, but among Ogier, if a girl sees a boy she likes, she goes to her mother, or sometimes the mother sees someone she thinks is suitable. In any case, if they agree, the girl's mother goes to the boy's mother, and the next thing the boy knows, his marriage is all arranged."
"Doesn't the boy have any say in it?" Matt asked incredulously.
"None. The women always say we would spend our lives married to the trees if it was left to us."
Loyal shifted, grimacing.
"Half of our marriages take place between steading. Groups of young Ogier visit from steading to steading so they can see and be seen. If they discover I'm outside without permission, the elders will almost certainly decide I need a wife to settle me down. Before I know it, they'll have sent a message to steading Shanghai to my mother, and she will come here and have me married before she washes the dust off her journey. She always said I am too hasty and need a wife. I think she was looking when I left. Whatever wife she chooses for me, well, any wife at all won't let me go back outside until I have gray in my beard. Wives always say no man should be allowed outside until he's settled enough to control his temper."
Matt gave a guffaw loud enough to draw every head, but at Loyal's frantic gesture, he spoke softly. "Among us, men do the choosing, and no wife can stop a man doing what he wants." Rand frowned, remembering how Egwene had begun following him around when they were both little. It was then that Mistress Alvear had begun taking a special interest in him, more than in any of the other boys. Later, some girls would dance with him on feast days, and some would not, and those who would were always Egwene's friends, while those who would not were girls Egwene did not like. He also seemed to remember Mistress Alvear taking Tam aside, and she was muttering about Tam not having a wife for her to talk to. And after that, Tam and everyone else had acted as if he and Egwene were promised, even though they had not knelt before the women's circle to say the words. He had never thought about it this way before. Things between Egwene and him had always just seemed to be the way they were, and that was that. "I think we do it the same way," he muttered. When Matt laughed, he added, "Do you remember your father ever doing anything your mother really didn't want him to?" Matt opened his mouth with a grin, then frowned thoughtfully and closed it again. Juan came down the steps from outside.
"If you please,
Lighting number
will all of you come with
round
me?
one.
The elders would see you."
He did not look at Loyal, but Loyal still almost dropped the book. "If the elders try to make you stay," Rand said, "we'll say we need you to go with us." "I'll bet it isn't about you at all," Matt said. "I'll bet they're just going to say we can use the Waygate." He shook himself, and his voice fell even lower. "We really have to do it, don't we?" It was not a question.
"Stay and get married or travel the ways,"
Loyal grimaced ruefully.
"Life is very
Right,
uncertain
fire in the hole.
for friends."
Chapter 36. Among the Elders. As Juan took them through the Ogier town, Rand saw that Loyal was growing more and more anxious. Loyal's ears were as stiff as his back. His eyes grew bigger every time he saw another Ogier looking at him, especially the women and girls, and a large number of them did seem to take notice of him. He looked as if he expected his own execution. The bearded Ogier gestured to wide steps leading down into a grassy mound that was bigger by far than any other. It was a hill for all practical purposes, almost at the base of one of the great trees. "Why don't you wait out here, Boyle?" Rand said.
The elders.
Juan began. "Probably just want to see the rest of us," Rand finished for him. "Why don't they leave him alone?" Rand put in. Boyle nodded vigorously.
Yes, I think.
A number of Ogier women were watching him, from white-haired grandmothers to parents' age. A knot of them was himself, but with all eyes on him. His ears jerked, but he looked at the broad door to which the stone steps led down and nodded again.
Yes, I will sit out here and I'll read. That is it. I will read.
Fumbling in his coat pocket, he produced a book. He settled himself on the mound beside the steps, the book small in his hands, and fixed his eyes on the pages.
I will just sit here and read until you come out.
His ears twitched as if he could feel the women's eyes. Juan shook his head, then shrugged and motioned to the steps again.
If you please, the elders are waiting.
The huge windowless room inside the mound was scaled for Ogier, with a thick beamed ceiling more than 4 spans up. It could have fit in any palace, for size at least. The 7 Ogier seated on the dais directly in front of the door made it shrink a little by their size, but Rand still felt as if he were in a cavern. The somber floor stones were smooth, if large and irregular in shape, but the gray walls could have been the rough side of a cliff. The ceiling beams, rough-hewn as they were, looked like great roots. Except for a high-backed chair where Baron sat facing the dais, the only furnishings were the heavy, vine-covered chairs of the elders. The Ogier woman in the middle of the dais sat in a chair raised a little higher than those of the others, 3 bearded men to her left in long, flaring coats, 3 women to her right in dresses like her own, embroidered in vines and flowers from neckline to hem. All had aged faces and pure white hair, even to the tufts on their ears, and an air of massive dignity. Huron gaped at them openly, and Rand felt like staring himself. Not even Varen had the appearance of wisdom that was in the elders' huge eyes. No more gaze in her crown their authority, no more reign their calm serenity. Ingtar was the first to bow, as formally as Rand had ever seen from him, while the others still stood rooted.
I am Allah.
The Ogier woman on the highest chair said, when they had finally taken their places beside Varen.
Eldest of the elders of Stelling Sofu. Baron has told us that you have need to use the Waygate here. To recover the Horn of Valir from Dark Friends is a great need indeed. But we have allowed none to travel the ways in more than 100 years. Neither us nor the elders of any other city.
"I will find the horn," Ingtar said angrily. "I must. If you will not permit us to use the Waygate." He fell silent as Varen looked at him, but the scowl remained on his face. Alar smiled.
Be not so hasty, Shinolan. You humans never take time for thought. Only decisions reached in calm can be sure.
Her smile faded to seriousness, but her voice kept its own measured calm.
The dangers of the ways are not to be faced with a sword in your hand, not charging Aiel or ravening trollops. I must tell you that to enter the ways is to risk not only death and madness, but perhaps your very souls.
"We have seen much in Shin," Rand said, and Matt and Karen agreed. They could not manage to sound eager to do it again. "I will follow the horn to Shale Ghul itself, if need be," Ingtar said firmly. Huron only nodded as if including himself in Ingtar's words.
Bring trail,
Alar commanded, and Juan, who had remained by the door, bowed and left.
It is not enough, she told Baron. To hear what can happen, you must see it. Know it in your heart.
There was an uncomfortable silence until Juan returned, and it became more uncomfortable still as 2 Ogier women followed him, guiding a dark-bearded Ogier of middle years who shambled between them, as if he did not quite know how his legs worked. His face sagged without any expression at all, and his big eyes were vacant and unblinking. Not staring, not looking, not even seeming to see. One of the women gently wiped drool from the corner of his mouth. They took his arms to stop him. His foot went forward, hesitated, then fell back with a thump. He seemed as content to stand as to walk, or at least as uncaring.
Trail was one of the last among us to go along the ways,
Allah said softly.
He came out as you see. Will you touch him then?
Varen gave her a long look, then rose and strode to Trail. He did not move as she laid her hands on his wide chest, not even a flicker of an eye to acknowledge her touch. With a sharp hiss, she jerked back, staring up at him, then whirled to face the elders. He is empty. This body lives, but there is nothing inside it. Nothing. Every elder wore a look of unbearable sadness.
Nothing,
One of the elders to Allah's right said softly. Her eyes seemed to hold all the pain Trails no longer could.
no mind, no soul. Nothing of Trail remains but his body. He was a fine tree singer,
One of the men sighed. Allah motioned, and the two women turned Trail to lead him out. They had to move him before he began to walk. We know the risks, Varen said. But whatever the risks, we must follow the Horn of Valir. The elders nodded.
The Horn of Valir. I do not know whether it is worse news that it is in Dark Friend hands, or that it has been found at all.
She looked down the row of elders. Each nodded in turn, one of the men tugging his beard doubtfully first.
Very well. Varen tells me time is urgent. I will show you to the way gate myself.
Rand was feeling half relieved and half afraid when she added,
You have with you a young Ogier, Loyal, son of Arendt, son of Hullen, from Stilling Shanghai. He is far from his home.
We need him, Rand said quickly. His words slowed under surprised stares from the elders and Varen, but he went on stubbornly. We need him to go with us, and he wants to. Loyal's a friend, Varen said, at the same time that Matt said, he doesn't get in the way, and he carries his own weight. Neither of them appeared comfortable at having the elders' focus shift to them, but they did not back down. Is there some reason he cannot come with us? Ingtar asked. As Matt says, he has held his own. I don't know that we need him, but if he wants to come, why? We do need him, Varen broke in smoothly. You any longer know the ways, but Loyal has studied them. He can decipher the guidings. Alar eyed them each in turn, then settled to a study of Rand. She looked as if she knew things. All the elders did, but she most of all.
Varen says you are Tavir,
She said at last.
and I can feel it in you. That I can do so means that you must be very strongly Taviran indeed, for such talents ever run weakly in us, if at all. Have you drawn Loyal, son of Arendt, son of Hallen, into Tomorrow Island, the web the pattern weaves around you?
I just want to find the horn and... Rand let the rest of it die. Alar had not mentioned Matt's dagger. He did not know whether Varen had told the elders or held it back for some reason. He is my friend, elders,
Your friend.
Alar said.
He is young by our way of thinking. You are young too, but Taviran. You will look after him, and when the weaving is done, you will see that he comes safely home to Stilling Shanghai.
I will, he told her. It had the feeling of a commitment, the swearing of an oath.
Then we will go to the way gate.
Outside, Loyal scrambled to his feet when they appeared, Alar and Varen leading. Ingtar sent Huron off at a run to fetch Uno and the other soldiers. Loyal eyed the eldest warily, then fell in with Rand at the rear of the procession. The Ogier women who had been watching him were all gone.
Did the elders say anything about me? Did she?
He
Round
peered at
one
Alar's
done.
broad back as she ordered Juin to have their horses brought. She started off with Baron, while June was still bowing himself away, bending her head to talk quietly. She told Rand to take care of you, told Loyal solemnly as they followed, and see you got home safely as a babe. I don't see why you can't stay here and get married. She said you could come with us. Rand glared at Matt, which made Matt chortle under his breath. It sounded odd coming from that drawn face. Loyal was twirling the stem of a true heart between his fingers. Did you go picking flowers?
Gareth gave it to me.
Loyal watched the yellow petals spin.
She really is very pretty, even if Matt does not see it.
Does that mean you don't want to go with us after all? Loyal gave a start.
What? Oh, no. I mean, yes, I do want to go. She only gave me a flower. Just a flower.
He took a book out of his pocket, though, and pressed the blossom under the front cover. As he returned the book, he murmured to himself, barely loud enough for Rand to hear.
And she said I was handsome, too.
Matt let out a wheeze and doubled over, staggering along, clutching his sides, and Loyal's cheeks colored.
Well, she said it. I didn't.
Perrin rapped Matt smartly on the top of his head with his knuckles. Nobody ever said Matt was handsome. He's just jealous. That's not true, Matt said, straightening abruptly. Marisa Ellen thinks I'm handsome. She told me so more than once.
Is Maurice so pretty?
Loyal asked. She has a face like a goat, Perrin said blandly. Matt choked, trying to get his protests out. Rand grinned in spite of himself. Marisa was almost as pretty as Egwene. And this was almost like old times. Almost like being back home, bantering back and forth, and nothing more important in the world than a laugh and twitting the other fellow. As they made their way through the town, Ogier greeted the eldest, bowing or curtsying, eyeing the human visitors with interest. Allah's set face kept anyone from stopping to speak, though. The only thing that indicated when they left the town was the absence of the mounds. There were still Ogier about, examining trees or sometimes working with pitch and saw or axe, where there were dead limbs or where a tree needed more sunlight. They handled the tasks tenderly. Juan joined them, leading their horses, and Huron came riding with Uno and the other soldiers and the pack horses, just before Allah pointed and said,
It is over there.
The banter died. Rand felt a momentary surprise. The waygate had to be outside the steading. The ways had been begun with the one power. They could not have been made inside, but there was nothing to indicate they had crossed the boundary. Then he realized there was a difference. The sense of something lost that he had felt since entering the steading was gone. That gave him another sort of chill. Saidin was there again, waiting. Allah led them past a tall oak, and there, in a small clearing, stood the big slab of the waygate, in front of it delicately worked in tightly woven vines and leaves from 100 different plants. Around the edge of the clearing, the Ogier had built a low stone coping that seemed as if it had grown there, suggesting a circle of roots. The look of it made Rand uncomfortable. It took him a moment to realize that the roots suggested were those of bramble and briar, burning leaf, and itch oak. The eldest stopped short of the coping.
The wall is meant to warn away any who comes here. Not that many of us do. I myself will not cross it, but you may.
Juan did not go as close as she did. He kept rubbing his hands in the front of his coat and would not look at the waygate. Thank you, Baron told her. The need is great, or I would not have asked. Rand tensed as the Aes Sedai stepped over the coping and approached the waygate. Loyal took a deep breath and muttered to himself. Uno and the rest of the soldiers shifted in their saddles and loosened swords in their scabbards. There was nothing along the ways against which a sword would be any use, but it was something to convince themselves they were ready. Only Ingtar and the Aes Sedai seemed calm. Even Allah gripped her skirt with both hands. Varen plucked the Avendasora leaf, and Rand leaned forward intently. He knew an urge to assume the void, to be where he could reach Saidin if he needed to. The greenery carved across the waygate stirred in an unfelt breeze, leaves fluttering as a gap opened down the center of the mass, and the two halves began to swing open. Rand stared at the first crack. There was no dull, silvery reflection behind it, only blackness blacker than pitch. "Close it!" he shouted. "The black wind! Close it!" Baron took one startled look and thrust the three-pointed leaf back in among all the buried leaves already there. It stayed when she took her hand away and back toward the coping. As soon as the Avendasaur leaf was back in its place, the waygate immediately began to close. The crack disappeared, vines and leaves merging, hiding the blackness of Machin Shin. And the waygate was only stone again, if stone carved in a nearer semblance of life than seemed possible. Alar let out a shuddering breath.
Machin Shin, so close.
"It didn't try to come out," Rand said. Juan made a strangled sound. "I have told you," Baron said. "The black wind is a creature of the ways. It cannot leave them." She sounded calm, but she still wiped her hands on her skirt. Rand opened his mouth, then gave it up. "And yet," she went on, "I wonder at it being here. First in Kyrie and now here. I wonder." She gave Rand a sidelong glance that made him jump. The look was so quick that he did not think anyone else noticed it, but to Rand it seemed to connect in with the black wind.
"I have never heard of this,"
Alar said slowly.
Machin Shin waiting when a waygate was opened. It always roamed the ways. But it has been long, and perhaps the black wind hungers and hopes to catch some unwary one entering a gate. Baron, assuredly you cannot use this waygate. And however great your need, I cannot say I am sorry. The ways belong to the shadow now.
Rand frowned at the waygate. Could it be following me? There were too many questions. Had Fane somehow ordered the black wind? Baron said it could not be done, and why would Fane demand that he follow, then try to stop him? He only knew that he believed the message. He had to go to Toman Head. If they found the Horn of Valir and Matt's dagger under a bush tomorrow, he still had to go. Baron stood with eyes unfocused in thought. Matt was sitting on the coping with his head in his hands, and Baron watched him worriedly. Loyal seemed relieved that they could not use the waygate, and ashamed at being relieved. "We are done for here," Ingtar announced. "Baron said I followed you here against my better judgment. But I can no longer follow. I mean to return to Kyrian. Barthanes can tell me where the Dark Friends went, and somehow I will make him do it." "Fane went to Toman Head," Rand said wearily. "And where he went, that's where the horn is and the dagger. I suppose," Baron shrugged reluctantly, "I suppose we could try another waygate and another steading." Loyal stroked his chin and spoke quickly as if to make up for his relief at the failure here.
Steading Cantwon lies just above the river Irelem, and Steading Tajin is east of it in the spine of the world. But the waygate in Cavan, where the grove was closer, and the gate in the grove at Tarvalin is closest of all.
"Whichever waygate we try to use," Baron said absently, "I fear we will find Machin Shin waiting." Ala looked at her questioningly, but the Aes Sedai said no more than anyone could hear. She muttered to herself instead, shaking her head as if arguing with herself. "What we need," Huron said diffidently, "is one of those portal stones." He looked to Alar, then Baron, and when neither told him to stop, he went on, sounding increasingly confident. "The Lady Selene said those old Sedai had studied those worlds, and that was how they knew how to make the ways. And that place we were, well, it only took us 2 days less to travel 100 leagues. If we could use a portal stone to go to that world, or one like it, why, it'd take no more than a week or two to reach the Arth Ocean. And we could come back right on Toman Head. Maybe it isn't so quick as the ways, but it's a long sight quicker than riding off west. What do you say, Lord Ingtar? Lord Rand?" Baron answered him. "What you suggest might be possible, Sniffer, but as well hope to open this waygate again and find Machin Shin gone as hope to find a portal stone. I know none closer than the Aiur Waste, though we could go back into Kinslayer's dagger if you or Rand or Loyal think you could find that stone again." Rand looked at Matt. His friend had lifted his head hopefully at this talk of the stones. "A few weeks," Baron had said. If they simply rode west, Matt would never live to see Toman Head. I can find it, Rand said reluctantly. He felt ashamed. That's going to die. Dark friends have the Horn of Valir. Thane will hurt Heming's field if you don't follow him. And you're afraid to channel the power. Once to go and once to come back. Twice more won't drive you mad. What really made him afraid, though, was the eagerness that leaped inside him at the thought of channeling again, of feeling the power fill him, of feeling truly alive.
I do not understand this, Alar said slowly. The portal stones have not been used since the Age of Legends. I did not think there was anyone who still knew how to use them.
The brown object knows many things, Baron said dryly, and I know how the stones may be used. The eldest nodded.
Truly there are wonders in the White Tower of which we do not dream. But if you can use a portal stone, there is no need for you to ride to Kinslayer's dagger. There is a stone not far from where we stand.
The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, and the pattern provides what is needful. The absent look dropped from Baron's face altogether. Take us to it, she said briskly. We have lost more than enough time already. Chapter 37. What Might Be. Alar led them away from the waygate at a dignified pace, though Juan seemed more than anxious to leave the waygate behind. Matt, at least, looked ahead eagerly, and Huron seemed confident, while Royal appeared concerned more that Alar might change her mind about his going than about anything else. Rand did not hurry as he pulled Red along by the reins. He did not think Varen meant to use the stone herself. The gray stone column stood upright near a beach almost 100 feet tall and 4 paces thick. Rand would have thought it a big tree before he saw the great trees. There was no warning coping here, only a few wildflowers pushing through the leafy mulch of the forest floor. The portal stone itself was weathered, but the symbols covering it were still clear enough to make out. The mounted Shinaran soldiers spread out in a loose circle around the stone, and those afoot.
We stood it upright, Alar said, when we found it many years ago. But we did not know
Heavy gaming.
it seemed to resist being moved.
Oh
She
yeah.
went right up to it and laid a big hand on the stone.
Oh, tanking.
I
Hell
have
yeah.
always thought of it as a symbol of what has been lost, what has been
I
forgotten.
didn't do too much gaming
In
today.
the Age of Legends, it could be studied and somewhat understood.
I'll be right back.
To us, it is only stone.
More
Hardcore.
than that,
Hell
I
yeah.
hope. Baron's voice grew brisker. Eldest, I thank you for your help. Forgive us for our lack of ceremony in meeting you, but the wheel waits for no woman. At least we will no longer disturb the peace of your stepping.
We called the stonemasons back from Kyrian,
Alar said.
but we still hear what happens in the world outside. False dragons, the great hunt of the Horde. We hear, and it passes us by. I do not think Tarmangaden will pass us by or leave us in peace. Fare you well, Varen, said I. All of you farewell, and may you shelter in the palm of the Creator's hand. Juin?
She paused only for a glance at Royal and a last admonitory look at Rand. And then the Ogier were gone among the trees. There was a creaking of saddles as the soldiers shifted. Ingtar looked around the circle they made. Is this necessary, Baron, said I. Even if it can be done. We do not even know if the Dark Friends really have taken the horn to Tomanhead. I still believe I can make Barthanes. If we cannot be sure, Baron said mildly, cutting him off, then Tomanhead is as good a place to look as any other. More than once I've heard you say you would ride to Shale Ghoul, if need be, to recover the horn. Do you hold back now at this? She gestured to the stone under the smooth-barked tree. Ingtar's back stiffened. I hold back nothing. Take us to Tomanhead or take us to Shale Ghoul. If the Horn of Valir lies at the end, I will follow you. That is well, Ingtar. Now, Rand, you have been transported by a portal stone more recently than I. Come. She motioned to him, and he led Red over to her at the stone. You've used a portal stone? He glanced over his shoulder to make sure no one else was close enough to hear. Then you don't mean for me to? He gave a relieved shrug. Varen looked at him blandly. I have never used a stone. That is why your use is more recent than mine. I am well aware of my limits. I would be destroyed before I came close to channeling enough power to work the portal stone. But I know a little of them. Enough to help you a bit. But I don't know anything. He led his horse around the stone, looking it up and down. The one thing I remember is the symbol for our world. Celine showed me. But I don't see it here. Of course not. Not on a stone in our world. The symbols are aids in getting to a world. She shook her head. What I would not give to talk with this girl of yours. Or better, to put my hands on her book. It is generally thought that no copies of Mirrors of the Wheel survive the breaking hold. Sarafella always tells me there are more books that we believe lost than I could credit waiting to be found. Well, no use in worrying more when I don't know. I do know some things. The symbols on the top half of the stone stand for worlds. Not all the worlds that might be, of course. Apparently not every stone connects to every world, and the Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends believed that there were possible worlds no stones at all touched. Do you see nothing that sparks a memory? Nothing. If he found the right symbol, he could use it to find Pain in the Horn, to save Matt, to stop Pain hurting Emmons Field. If he found the symbol, he would have to touch Saidin. He wanted to save Matt and stop Thane, but he did not want to touch Saidin. He was afraid to channel, and he hungered for it like a starving man for food. I don't remember anything. Varen sighed. The symbols at the bottom indicate stones at other places. If you know the trick of it, you could take us, not to this same stone in another world, but to one of those others there, or even to one of them here.
Couple of hits of
There's
the dab
something
pen,
akin to
and
traveling, I think. But just
then we'll
as no
start
one
round
remembers
2.
how to travel, no one remembers the trick. Without that knowledge, trying it might easily destroy us all. She pointed to 2 parallel wavy lines crossed by an odd squiggle, carved low on the column. That indicates a stone on Toma Head. It is one of 3 stones for the symbol. The only one of those 3 I visited. And what I learned, after nearly being caught by the snows in the mountains of mist and freezing my way across Almoth Plains, was absolutely nothing. Do you play at dice or cards, Randall Thorpe? Matt's the gambler. Why? Yes. Well, these symbols are also known to me. With one finger, she outlined a rectangle containing 8 carvings that were much alike. A circle and an arrow. But in half, the arrow was contained inside the circle, while in the others, the point pierced the circle through. The arrows pointed left, right, up, and down. Surrounding each circle was a different line of what ran before, though in no language he knew. Curving lines that suddenly became jagged hooks, then flowed on again. At least, Varen went on, I know this much about it. Each stands for a world, the study of which led eventually to the making of the waves. These are not all worlds studied, but the only for which I know the symbol. This is the example. I don't know what any of these worlds is like. It is believed there are worlds where a year is only a day here, and others where a day is a year here. There are supposed to be worlds where the very air would kill us at a breath, and worlds that barely have enough reality to hold together. I would not speculate on what might happen if we found ourselves in one of those. You must choose. As my father would have said, it's time to roll the dice. Rand stared, shaking his head. I could kill all of us, whatever I choose. Are you not willing to take that risk? For the Horn of Valir, or Matt? Why are you so willing to take it? I don't even know if I can do it. It doesn't matter how to try. He knew no one had come any closer, but he looked anyway. All of them waited in a loose circle around the stone, watching, but not close enough to eavesdrop. Sometimes Sidene is just there. I can feel it. But it might as well be on the moon as far as touching it. And even if it does work, what if I take it someplace we can't reach it? What good will that do, Matt? Or the horn? You are the dragon reborn, she said quietly. Oh, you can die, but I don't think the pattern will let you die until it is done with you. Then again, the shadow lies on the pattern now. And who can say how that affects the weaving? All you can do is follow your destiny. I am Randolph Thor, he growled. I am not the dragon reborn. I won't be a false dragon. You are what you are. Will you choose, or will you stand here until your friend dies? Rand heard his teeth grinding and forced himself to unclench his jaw. The symbols could all have been exactly alike for all they meant to him. The script could as well have been a chicken's scratching. At last he settled on one with an arrow pointing left because it pointed toward Tomon Head. An arrow that pierced the circle because it had broken free as he wanted to. He wanted to laugh. Such small things on which to gamble all their lives. Come closer, there imported the others. It will be best if you are near. They obeyed with only a little hesitation. It is time to begin, she said, as they gathered round. She threw back her cloak and put her hands on the column, but Rand saw her watching him from the corner of her eye. He was aware of nervous coughing and throat clearing from the men around the stone, a curse from Uno at someone hanging back, a weak joke from Matt, a loud gulp from Loyal. He took the void. It was so easy now. The flame consumed fear and passion, and was gone almost before he thought to form it. Gone, leaving only emptiness and shining Sidene, sickening, tantalizing, stomach-turning, seductive. He reached for it, and it filled him, made him alive. He did not move a muscle, but he felt as if he were quivering with the rush of the one power into him. The symbol formed itself, an arrow piercing a circle, floating just beyond the void, as hard as the stuff it was carved on. He let the one power flow through him to the symbol. The symbol shimmered, flickered. Something is happening, Baron said. Something. The world flickered. The iron lock spun across the farmhouse floor, and Rand dropped the hot tea kettle as a huge figure with ram's horns on its head loomed in the doorway with the darkness of winter night behind it. Run! Tam shouted. His sword flashed and the Trolloc toppled, but he grappled with Tam as it fell, pulling him down. More came at the door, black mailed shapes with human faces distorted with muzzles and beaks and horns, oddly curved swords stabbing at Tam as he tried to struggle to his feet, spiked axes swinging, red blood on steel. Father! Rand screamed. Clawing his belt knife from its sheath, he threw himself over the table to help his father, and screamed again as the first sword ran through his chest. Blood bubbled up into his mouth, and a voice whispered inside his head, I have won again, lose that. Flicker. Rand struggled to hold the symbol, dimly aware of Baron's voice. He is not. The power flooded. Flicker. Rand was happy after he married Egwene, and tried not to let the moods take him, the times when he thought there should have been something more, something different. News of the world outside came into the Two Rivers with peddlers and merchants come to buy wool and tobacco. Always news of fresh troubles, of wars and false dragons everywhere. There was a year when neither merchants nor peddlers came, and when they returned the next, they brought word that Utter Hawkwing's armies had come back, or their descendants at least. The old nations were broken, it was said, and the world's new masters, who used chained Aes Sedai in their battles, had torn down the White Tower and salted the ground where Tar Valon had stood. There were no more Aes Sedai. It all made little difference in the Two Rivers. Crops still had to be planted, sheep sheared, lambs tended. Tam had grandsons and granddaughters to dandle on his knee before he was laid to rest beside his wife. The old farmhouse grew new rooms. Egwene became wisdom, and most thought she was even better than the old wisdom Nynaeve Almira had been. It was as well she was, for her cures that worked so miraculously on others were only just able to keep Rand alive from the sickness that constantly seemed to threaten him. His moods grew worse, blacker, and he raged that this was not what was meant to be. Egwene grew frightened when the moods were on him, for strange things sometimes happened when he was at his bleakest. Lightning storms she had not heard listening to the wind, wildfires in the forest. But she loved him and cared for him and kept him sane, though some muttered that Randolph Thor was crazy and dangerous. When she died, he sat alone for long hours by her grave, tears soaking his gray-flecked beard. His sickness came back, and he wasted. He lost the last 2 fingers on his right hand, one on his left. His ears looked like scars, and men muttered that he smelled of decay. His blackness deepened. Yet when the dire news came, none refused to accept him at their side. Trollocs and Fades and things undreamed of had burst out of the blight, and the world's new masters were being thrown back for all the powers they
Give
had.
me 1 second and
So Rand took
we'll
up the
do
bow.
some
He
dab
had
pin
just fingers
heads.
enough left to shoot, and went with
I
those
gotta
who
go get
marched north to the river
another
Tyne.
drink.
Men from every village, farm, and corner of the 2 rivers, with their bows and axes and boar spears and swords that had lain rusting in axe. Rand wore a sword too, with a heron on the blade, that he had found after Tam died, though he knew nothing of how to use it. Women came too, shouldering what weapons they could find, marching alongside the men. Some laughed, saying that they had the strange feeling they had done this before. And at the Tarn, the people of the 2 rivers met the invaders, endless ranks of Trollocs led by nightmare Fades beneath a dead black banner that seemed to eat the light. Rand saw that banner and thought the madness had taken him again, for it seemed that this was what he had been born for, to fight that banner. He sent every arrow at it, straight as his skill in the void would serve, never worrying about the Trollocs forcing their way across the river, or the men and women dying to either side of him. It was one of those Trollocs that ran him through before it loped howling for blood deeper into the 2 rivers. And as he lay on the bank of the Tarn, watching the sky seem to grow dark at noon, breath coming ever slower, he heard a voice say, "I have one again, who's there?" Flicker. The arrow and circle contorted into parallel wavy lines, and he fought it back again. Baron's voice, "Right. Something..." The power raged. Flicker. Tam tried to console Rand when Egwene took sick and died just a week before their wedding. Nynaeve tried too, but she was shaken herself, since for all her skill she had no idea what it was that had killed the girl. Rand had sat outside Egwene's house while she died, and there seemed to be nowhere in Emond's Field he could go that he could not still hear her screaming. He knew he could not stay. Tam gave him a sword with a heron-marked blade, and though he explained little of how a shepherd in the 2 rivers had come by such a thing, he taught Rand how to use it. On the day Rand left, Tam gave him a letter he said might get Rand taken into the army of Ilion, and hugged him and said, "I've never had another son or wanted another. Come back with a wife like I did if you can, boy, but come back in any case." Rand had his money stolen in Bearlawn, though, and his letter of introduction, and almost his sword. And he met a woman called Min who told him such crazy things about himself that he finally left the city to get away from her. Eventually, his wanderings brought him to Camelin, and there his skill with the sword earned him a place in the Queen's Guards. Sometimes he found himself looking at the daughter heir Elaine, and at such times he was filled with odd thoughts that this was not the way things were supposed to be, that there should be something more to his life. Elaine did not look at him, of course. She married a tyrant prince, though she did not seem happy in it. Rand was just a soldier, once a shepherd from a small village so far toward the western border that only lines on a map any longer truly connected it to Andor. Besides, he had a dark reputation as a man of violent moods. Some said he was mad, and in ordinary times perhaps not even his skill with the sword would have kept him in the guard. But these were not ordinary times. False dragons sprang up like weeds. Every time one was taken down, 2 more proclaimed themselves, or 3, till every nation was torn by war. And Rand's star rose, for he had learned the secret of his madness. A secret he knew he had to keep, and did. He could channel. There were always places, times, in a battle when a little channeling, not big enough to be noticed in the confusion, could make luck. Sometimes it worked, this channeling, and sometimes not. But it worked often enough. He knew he was mad and did not care. A wasting sickness came on him. And he did not care about that either. Neither did anyone else. A word had come that Utter Hawkwing's armies had returned to reclaim the land. Brand led 1,000 men when the Queen's guards crossed the mountains of mist. He never thought of turning aside to visit the two rivers. He seldom thought of the two rivers at all anymore. He commanded the guard when the shattered remnants retreated back across the mountains. The length of Andor he fought and fell back amid hordes of fleeing refugees until at last he came to Camelin. Many of the people of Camelin had fled already, and many counseled the army to retreat further. But Elaine was queen now, and vowed she would not leave Camelin. She would not look at his ruined face, scarred by his sickness. But he could not leave her. And so what was left of the Queen's guards prepared to defend the Queen while her people ran. The power came to him during the battle for Camelin, and he hurled lightning and fire among the invaders and split the earth under their feet. Yet the feeling came again, too, that he had been born for something else. For all he did, there were too many of the enemy to stop, and they also had those who could channel. At last a lightning bolt hurled Rand from the palace wall, broken, bleeding, and burned. As his last breath rattled in his throat, he heard a voice whisper, "I have won again, Louis there." Flicker. Rand struggled to hold the void as it quivered under the hammer blows of the world flickering. To hold the one symbol as 1,000 of them darted along the surface of the void. He struggled to hold on to any one symbol. "Is wrong!" Baron screamed. The power was everything. Flicker, 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 flicker. He was a soldier, he was a shepherd, he was a beggar and a king. He was farmer, gleeman, sailor, carpenter. He was born, lived, and died in Aiel. He died mad, he died rotting, he died of sickness, accident, age. He was executed, and multitudes cheered his death. He proclaimed himself the dragon reborn and flung his banner across the sky. He ran from the power and hid. He lived and died, never knowing. He held off the madness and the sickness for years. He succumbed between two winters. Sometimes Moraine came and took him away from the two rivers, alone or with those of his friends who had survived winter night. Sometimes she did not. Sometimes other Aes Sedai came for him. Sometimes the Red Atja. Egwene married him. Egwene, stern-faced in the stole of the Amelin seat, led the Aes Sedai who gentled him. Egwene, with tears in her eyes, plunged a dagger into his heart, and he thanked her as he died. He loved other women, married other women, Elaine and Min, and a fair-haired farmer's daughter met on the road to Camelin. And women he had never seen before, he lived those lives. 100 lives, more, so many he could not count them. And at the end of every story, as he lay dying, as he drew final breath, a voice whispered in his ear, "I have won again, Lews Therin." Flicker, 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 flicker. The void vanished. Contact with Saidin fled. Rand fell with a thud that would have knocked the breath out of him if he had not already been half numb. He felt rough stone under his cheek and his hands. It was cold. He was aware of Varen struggling from her back to her hands and knees. He heard someone vomit roughly and raised his head. Una was kneeling on the ground, scrubbing the back of his hand across his mouth. Everyone was down, and the horses stood stiff-legged and quivering, eyes wild and rolling. Ingtar had his sword out, gripping the hilt so hard the blade shook, staring at nothing. Loyal sat sprawled, wide-eyed and stunned. Matt was huddled in a ball with his arms wrapped around his head, and Perrin had his fingers dug into his face as if he wanted to rip away whatever he had seen, or perhaps rip out the eyes that had seen it. None of the soldiers were any better. Masima wept openly, tears streaming down his face, and Huron was looking around as if for a place to run. "What?" Rand stopped to swallow. He was lying on rough, weathered stone, half buried in the dirt. "What happened?" "A surge of my power." The Aes Sedai tottered to her feet and pulled her cloak tight with a shiver. "It was as if we were being forced, pushed. It seemed to come out of nowhere. You must learn to control it. You must. That much of the power could burn you to a cinder. Baron, I lived. I was..." He realized the stone under him was rounded. The portal stone. Hastily, shakily, He pushed himself to his feet. Baron, I lived and died. I don't know how many times. Every time it was different, but it was me. It was me. The line
I had to go
that
get
joined
a
the worlds that
refill,
might be,
but
laid by those who knew the numbers
hey,
of heavens.
Babylon,
Baron shuddered.
I had to go
He
make
seemed to be talking to
some
himself.
fresh Kool-Aid because there wasn't no
I've never
more,
heard it.
so
There is no reason
that's
we
what
would
took
not
me a
be
little bit
born in
longer.
those worlds. Yet the lives we lived would be different lives. Of course. Different lives.
I hope you're doing good, Babylon.
Is that what happened? We saw how our lives could have been? I have won again. Is there? No. I am Randall Thor. Baron gave herself a shake and looked at him. Does it surprise you that your life might go differently if you made different choices? Or different things happen to you? Though I never thought of. Well, the important thing is we are here. Though not as we hoped. Where is here? He demanded. The woods of Steading Tofu were gone, replaced by rolling land. There seemed to be forest not far to the west, and a few
Hell
hills.
yeah.
It had been high in the day when they gathered around the stone in the steading, but here the sun stood low toward afternoon in a gray sky. The handful of trees nearby were bare-branched, or else had a few leaves bright with color. A cold wind gusted from the east, sending leaves scurrying across the ground. Toman Head, Derek said. This is the stone I visited. You should not have tried to bring us directly here. I don't know what went wrong. I don't suppose I ever will. But from the trees, I would say it is well into late autumn. And we haven't gained any time by it.
Have no burgers, right? Luckily, I had some sugar for the Kool-Aid.
4 months in coming here. But I didn't. You
Could
must
we,
let me guide you in these things. I cannot teach you, it's true, but perhaps I can at least keep you from
because we've had that happen before over here. That we've had Kool-Aid and no sugar, or we've had sugar but no Kool-Aid. Usually when that happens, if we had the sugar but no Kool-Aid, we usually make some tea. Because we got tea bags, we just do that, or we'll boil it, or with our heat, we could throw it in a glass container and put it outside, and we'll have some nice sun tea before long.
Except that memory still lay in his eyes. There, she said, that will do for you. I will see how I can help the rest. We may still recover the horn, but our path has not grown smoother. As she started around among the others, stopping briefly by each, Rand went to his friends. When he tried to straighten Matt jerked and stared at him, then grabbed Rand's coat with both hands. Rand, I'd never tell anyone about you. I wouldn't betray you. You have to believe that. He looked worse than ever, but Rand thought it was mostly fright. I do, Rand said. He wondered what lives Matt had lived, and what he had done. He must have told someone, or he wouldn't be so anxious about it. He could not hold it against him. Those had been other Matts, not this one. Besides, after some of the alternatives he had seen for himself, I believe you. Karen? The curly-haired youth dropped his hands from his face with a sigh. Red marks scored his forehead and cheeks where his nails had dug in. His yellow eyes hid his thoughts. We don't have many choices, really, do we, Rand? Whatever happens, whatever we do, some things are almost always the same. He let out another long breath. Where are we? Is this one of those worlds you and Huron were talking about? It's Toman Head, Rand told him. In our world. Or so Baron says. And it is autumn. Matt looked worried. How could... No, I don't want to know how it happened. But how are we going to find Fane and the dagger now? He could be anywhere by this time. He's here, Rand assured him. He hoped he was right. Fane had had time to take ship for any place he wanted to go. Time to ride to Women's Field or Tarvalin. Please, Light. He didn't get tired of waiting. If he's heard of Dwayne or anybody in Women's Field, Light Burnley, I tried to come in time. The larger towns of Tillman Head are all west of here, Baron announced loudly enough for all to hear. Everyone was on their feet again except for Rand and his two friends. She came and put her hands on Matt as she spoke. Not that there are many villages large enough to call towns. If we are to find any trace of the Dark Friends, to the west is the place to begin, and I think we should not waste the daylight sitting here. When Matt blinked and stood up, he still looked ill, but he moved spryly. She put her hands on Perrin. Rand backed away when she reached for him. Don't be foolish, she told him. I don't want your help, he said quietly, or any Aes Sedai help. Her lips twitched. As you wish. They mounted immediately and rode west, leaving the portal.
We should hit some wedding cake now.
No one
we'll start round 2.
Why, let me not be too late.
Chapter 38. Practice. Sitting cross-legged on her bed in her white dress, Egwene made 3 tiny balls of light weave patterns above her hands. She was not supposed to do this without at least one of the accepted to supervise, but Nynaeve, glaring and striding up and down in front of the small fireplace, did after all wear the serpent ring given to the accepted, and her white dress had the colored rings encircling the hem, even if she was not allowed to try to teach anyone yet. And Egwene had found over these last 13 weeks that she could not resist. She knew how easy it was to touch Saïda. She could always feel it there, waiting for her, like the smell of perfume or the feel of silk, drawing her. And once she did touch it, she could rarely stop from channeling, or at least trying to. She failed almost as often as she succeeded, but that was only another spur to keep on. It often frightened her. How much she wanted to channel frightened her, and how drab and dreary she felt when she was not channeling compared to when she was. She wanted to drink it all in, despite the cautions about burning herself out, and that frightened her most of all. Sometimes she wished she had never come to Tar Valon, but the thought did not make her stop for long, any more than the fear of being caught by an Aes Sedai or by any of the accepted beside Nynaeve. It was safe enough here, though, in her own room. Min was there, sitting on the 3-legged stool, watching her, but she knew Min well enough now to know Min would never report her. She thought she was lucky to have made 2 good friends since coming to Tar Valon. It was a little windowless room, as all novices' rooms were. 3 short paces took Nynaeve from wall to white-plastered wall. Nynaeve's own room was much larger, but since she had made no friends among the other accepted, she came to Egwene's room when she needed someone to talk to, even as now when she did not talk at all. The tiny fire on the narrow hearth handily kept the first chill of approaching autumn at bay, though Egwene was sure it would not serve so well when winter came. A small table for study completed the furnishings, and her belongings hung neatly on a row of pegs on the wall, or sat on the short shelf above the table. Novices were usually kept too busy to spend time in their rooms, but today was a free day, only the 3rd since she and Nynaeve had come to the White Tower. Ailes was making calf eyes at Galad today while he was working with the warders, Min said, rocking the stool on 2 legs.
Nice.
A small ball
I'm smoking
above Egwene's
roachweed. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to
Egwene said
get hold of some.
I can't imagine why I would be interested.
I'll be right back
No
again.
reason, I suppose.
Unfortunate thing
He
about
is awfully handsome, if you don't mind him being so rigid. Very nice to
the
look at,
Kool-Aid and whatnot
especially with his
makes
shirt
me
on.
go a lot more
The
pit
balls
stops.
spun furiously. I certainly have no desire to look at Galad, with or without his shirt. I shouldn't tease you, Min said contritely. I'm sorry for that. But you do like to look at him. Don't grimace at me like that. And so does nearly every woman in the White Tower who isn't a Red. I've seen Aes Sedai down at the practice yards when he's working forms, especially greens. Checking on their warders, they say. But I don't see so many when Galad isn't there. Even the cooks and maids come out to watch him. The balls stopped dead, and for a moment Egwene stared at them. They vanished. Suddenly she giggled. He is good-looking, isn't he? Even when he walks, he looks as if he's dancing. The color in her cheeks deepened. I know I shouldn't stare at him, but I can't help myself. I can't either, Min said, and I can see what he is like. But if he is good, Egwene, Galad is so good he'd make you tear your hair out. He'd hurt a person because he had to serve a greater good. He wouldn't even notice who was hurt because he'd be so intent on the other. But if he did, he would expect them to understand and think it was all well and right. I suppose you know, Egwene said. She had seen Min's ability to look at people and read all sorts of things about them. Min did not tell everything she saw, and she did not always see anything, but there had been enough for Egwene to believe. She glanced at Nynaeve. The other woman was still pacing, muttering to herself, then reached for Saidar again and resumed her juggling in a desultory fashion. Min shrugged. I guess I might as well tell you. He didn't even notice what Ailes was doing. He asked her if she knew whether you might be walking the south garden after supper, since today is a free day. I felt sorry for her. Poor Ailes, Egwene murmured, and the balls of light became more lively above her hands. Min laughed. The door banged open, caught by the wind. Egwene gave a yelp and let the balls vanish before she saw it was only Elaine. The golden-haired daughter heir of Andor pushed the door shut and hung up her cloak on a peg. I just heard, she said. The rumors are true. King Galdrion is dead. That makes it a war of succession. Min snorted. Civil war. War of succession. A lot of silly names for the same thing. Do you mind if we don't talk about it? That's all we hear. War in Kyrian. War on Tomon Head. They may have caught the false dragon in Saldaea, but there's still war in Tyr. Most of it is rumors anyway. Yesterday I heard one of the cooks saying she'd heard Arthur Hawkling was marching on Tanchico.
I have someone that was interested in buying my Nintendo Switch tomorrow, so
Elaine said. He was sitting on a bench in the inner court crying. He ran when he saw me. I cannot help feeling sorry for him. Better he cries than the rest of us, Elaine, Min said. I know what he is, Elaine said calmly, or rather what he was. He isn't anymore, and I can feel sorry for him. Egwene slumped back against the wall. Rand. Loghain always made her think of Rand. She had not dreamed about him in months now, not the kind of dreams she had had on the River Queen. Anaya still made her write down everything she dreamed, and the Aes Sedai checked them for signs or connections to events, but there was never anything about Rand except dreams that, Anaya said, meant she missed him. Oddly, she felt almost as if he were not there any longer, as if he had ceased to exist along with her dreams a few weeks after reaching the White Tower.
It's my Nintendo Switch
and
One,
I was sick thinking about how nicely Galad walks, she thought bitterly. Rand has to be all right. If he'd been caught and gentled, I'd have heard something. That sent a chill through her, as it never failed to do, the thought of Rand being gentled, Rand weeping and wanting to die as Loghain did. Elaine sat down beside her on the bed, tucking her feet up under her. If you are mooning over Galad, Egwene, you will have no sympathy from me. I'll have Nynaeve dose you with one of those horrible concoctions she's always talking about. She frowned at Nynaeve, who had taken no notice of her entrance. What is the matter with her? Don't tell me she has started sighing after Galad, too. I wouldn't bother her. Min leaned toward the two of them and lowered her voice. That skinny accepted Irella told her she was as clumsy as a cow and had half the talents, and Nynaeve clouded her ear. Elaine winced. Exactly, Min murmured. They had her up to Shiriam's study before you could blink, and she hadn't been fit to live with since. Apparently, Min had not dropped her voice enough, for there was a growl from Nynaeve. Suddenly, the door whipped open once more, and a gale howled into the room. It did not ruffle the blankets on Egwene's bed, but Min and the stool toppled to roll against the wall. Immediately, the wind died, and Nynaeve stood with a stricken look on her face. Egwene hurried to the door and peeked out. The noonday sun was burning off the last remainders of last night's rainstorm. The still damp balcony around the novices' court was empty, the long row of doors to novices' rooms all shut. The novices who had taken advantage of the free day to enjoy themselves in the gardens were no doubt catching up on their sleep. No one could have seen. She closed the door and took her place beside Elaine again as Nynaeve helped Min to her feet. "I'm sorry, Min," Nynaeve said in a tight voice. "Sometimes my temper... I can't ask you to forgive me, not for this." She took a deep breath. "If you want to report me to Shiriam, I will understand. I deserve it." Egwene wished she had not heard that admission. Nynaeve could grow prickly over such things. Searching for something on which to focus, something Nynaeve could believe she had had her attention on, she found herself touching Saidar once more, and began juggling the balls of light again. Elaine quickly joined her. Egwene saw the glow form around the daughter heir even before 3 tiny balls appeared above her hands. They began to pass the little glowing spheres back and forth in increasingly intricate patterns. Sometimes one winked out, as one girl or the other failed to maintain it as it came to her, then winked back a little altered in color or size. The one power filled Egwene with life. She smelled the faint rose aroma of soap from Elaine's morning bath. She could feel the rough plaster of the walls, the smooth stones of the floor, as well as she could the bed where she sat. She could hear Min and Nynaeve breathe, much less their quiet words. "If it comes to forgiving," Min said, "maybe you should forgive me. You have a temper and I have a big mouth. I will forgive you if you forgive me." With murmurs of "forgiven" that sounded meant on both sides, the two women hugged. "But if you do it again," Min said with a laugh, "I might clout your ear." "Next time," Nynaeve replied, "I will throw something at you." She was laughing too, but her laughter ceased abruptly as her eye fell on Egwene and Elaine. "You two stop that, or there will be someone going to the Mistress of Novices. 2 someones." "Nynaeve, you wouldn't," Egwene protested. When she saw the look in Nynaeve's eyes, though, she hastily severed all contact with Saidar. "Very well, I believe you. There's no need to prove it." "We have to practice," Elaine said. "They ask more and more of us. If we did not practice on our own, we would never keep up." Her face showed calm composure, but she had let go of Saidar as hastily as Egwene herself had. "And what happens when you draw too much?" Nynaeve asked. "And there's no one there to stop you?" "I wish you were more afraid." "I am. Don't you think I know what it is like for you? It's always there, and you want to fill yourself with it. Sometimes it is all I can do to make myself stop. I want all of it. I know it would burn me to a crisp, and I want it anyway." She shivered. "I just wish you were more afraid." "I am afraid," Egwene said with a sigh. "I'm terrified, but it doesn't seem to help. What about you, Elaine?" "The only thing that terrifies me," Elaine said airily, "is washing dishes. It seems as if I have to wash dishes every day." Egwene threw her pillow at her. Elaine pulled it off her head and threw it back, but then her shoulders slumped. "Oh, very well. I am so scared I don't know why my teeth are not chattering. Elida told me I'd be so frightened that I would want to run away with the traveling people, but I did not understand. A man who drove oxen as hard as they drive us would be shunned. I'm tired all the time. I wake up tired and go to bed exhausted, and sometimes I'm so afraid that I will slip and channel more of the power than I can handle that I..." Peering into her lap, she let the words trail off. Egwene knew what she had not spoken. Their rooms lay right next to each other, and, as in many of the novice rooms, a small hole had long ago been bored through the wall between, too small to be seen unless you knew where to look, but useful for talk after the lamps were extinguished, when the girls could not leave their rooms. Egwene had heard Elaine crying herself to sleep more than once, and she had no doubt that Elaine had heard her own crying. "The traveling people are tempting," Nynaeve agreed. "But wherever you go, it will not change what you can do. You cannot run from Saidar." She did not sound as if she liked what she was saying. "What do you see, Min?" Elaine said. "Are we all going to be powerful Aes Sedai?" Or will we spend the rest of our lives washing dishes as novices? Or... She shrugged uncomfortably, as if she did not want to voice the third alternative that came to mind. Sent home. Put out of the tower. 2 novices had been put out since Egwene came, and everyone spoke of them in whispers, as if they were dead. Min shifted on her stool. I don't like reading, friends, she muttered. Friendship gets in the way of the reading. It makes me try to put the best face on what I see. That's why I don't do it for you 3 anymore. Anyway, nothing has changed about you that I can... She squinted at them and suddenly frowned. That's new, she breathed. What? Nynaeve asked sharply. Min hesitated before answering. Danger. You were all in some kind of danger. Or you will be very soon. I can't make it out, but it is danger. You see, Nynaeve said to the 2 girls sitting on the bed, you must take care. We all must. You must both promise not to channel again without someone to guide you. I don't want to talk about it anymore, Egwene said. Elaine nodded eagerly. Yes, let's talk about something else. Min, if you put on a dress, I'll wager Darwin would ask you to go walking with him. You know he's been looking at you, but I think the breeches and the man's coat put him off. I dress the way I like, and I won't change for a lord, even if he is your brother. Min spoke absently, still squinting at them and frowning. It was a conversation they had had before. Sometimes it is useful to pass as a boy. No one who looks twice believes you are a boy. Elaine smiled. Egwene was uncomfortable. Elaine was forcing a semblance of gaiety. Min was hardly paying attention, and Nynaeve looked as if she wanted to warn them again. When the door swung open once more, Egwene bounded to her feet to close it,
how you doing,
grateful
Dick,
for something
please?
to do besides watch
Good
the
to see
others
ya.
pretend. Before she reached it, an Aes Sedai with her blonde hair done in a multitude of braids stepped into the room. Egwene blinked in surprise, as much at it being any Aes Sedai as at Liandrin. She had not heard that Liandrin had returned to the White Tower, but beyond that, novices were sent for if an Aes Sedai wanted them. It could mean no good a sister coming herself. The room was crowded with 5 women in it. Liandrin paused to adjust her red-fringed shawl, eyeing them. Min did not move, but Elaine rose, and the 3 standing curtsied, though Nynaeve barely flexed her knee. Egwene did not think Nynaeve would ever grow used to having others in authority over her. Liandrin's eyes settled on Nynaeve. And why are you here in the novices' quarters, child? Her tone was ice. I'm visiting with friends, Nynaeve said in a tight voice. After a moment, she added a belated, Liandrin Sedai. They accepted they can have no friends among the novices. This you should have learned by this time, child. But it is as well that I find you here. You and you, her fingers stabbed at Elaine and Min, will go. I will return later. Min rose casually, making a great show of being in no hurry to obey, and strolled by Liandrin with a grin, of which Liandrin took no notice at all. Elaine gave Egwene and Nynaeve a worried look before she dropped a curtsy and left. After Elaine closed the door behind her, Liandrin stood studying Egwene and Nynaeve. Egwene began to fidget under the scrutiny, but Nynaeve held herself straight, with only a little heightening of her color. You 2 are from the same village as the boys who traveled with Moiraine, is it not so? Liandrin said suddenly. Do you have some word of Rand? Egwene asked eagerly. Liandrin arched an eyebrow at her. Forgive me, Aes Sedai. I forget myself. Have you word of them? Nynaeve said, just short of a demand. The accepted had no rule about not speaking to an Aes Sedai until spoken to. You have concern for them. That is good. They are in danger and you might be able to help them. How do you know they're in trouble? There was no doubt about the demand in Nynaeve's voice this time. Liandrin's rosebud mouth tightened, but her tone did not change. Though you are not aware of it, Moiraine has sent letters to the White Tower concerning you. Moiraine Sedai, she worries about you and about your young friends. These boys, they are in danger. Do you wish to help them or leave them to their fate? Yes, Egwene said, at the same time that Nynaeve said, what kind of trouble? Why do you care about helping them? Nynaeve glanced at the red fringe on Leandrin's shawl. And I thought you didn't like Moiraine. Do not presume too much, child, Leandrin said sharply. To be accepted is not to be a sister. Accepted and novices alike listen when a sister speaks, and do as they are told. She drew a breath and went on. Her tone was coldly serene again, but angry white spots marred her cheeks. Someday, I am sure, you will serve a cause, and you will learn then that to serve it you must work even with those whom you dislike. I tell you, I have worked with many with whom I would not share a room if it were left to me alone. Would you not work alongside the one you hated worst if it would save your friends? Nynaeve nodded reluctantly. But you still haven't told us what kind of danger they're in, Leandrin said I. The danger comes from Shaiol Ghul. They are hunted, as I understand they once before were. If you will come with me, some dangers at least may be eliminated. Do not ask how, for I cannot tell you, but I tell you flatly it is so. We will come, Leandrin said I, Egwene said. Come where? Nynaeve said. Egwene shot her an exasperated look. Tomon Head. Egwene's mouth fell open, and Nynaeve muttered, There's a war on Tomon Head. Does this danger have something to do with Arthur Hawkwing's armies? You believe rumors, child? But even if they were true, is that enough to stop you? I thought you called these men friends. A twist to Leandrin's words said she would never do the same. We will come, Egwene said. Nynaeve opened her mouth again, but Egwene went right on. We will go, Nynaeve. If Rand needs our help, and Mat and Perrin, we have to give it. I know that, Nynaeve said. But what I want to know is, why us? What can we do that Moiraine or you, Leandrin, cannot? The white grew in Leandrin's cheeks. Egwene realized Nynaeve had forgotten the honorific in addressing her, but what she said was, You two come from their village. In some way I do not entirely understand, you are connected to them. Beyond that I cannot say, and no more of your foolish questions will I answer. Will you come with me for their sake? She paused for their assent. A visible tension left her when they nodded. Good. You will meet me at the northernmost edge of the Ogier Grove 1 hour before sunset with your horses and whatever you will need for the journey. Tell no one of this. We are not supposed to leave the tower grounds without permission, Nynaeve said slowly. You have my permission. Tell no one. No one at all. The Black Ajah walks the halls of the White Tower. Egwene gasped and heard an echoed gasp from Nynaeve, but Nynaeve recovered quickly. I thought all Aes Sedai denied the existence of that. Leandrin's mouth tightened into a sneer. Many do, but Tarmon Gaidon approaches, and the time leaves when denials can be made. The Black Ajah, it is the opposite of everything for which the tower stands, but it exists, child. It is everywhere. Any woman could belong to it, and it serves the Dark One. If your friends are pursued by the Shadow, do you think the Black Ajah will leave you alive and free to help them? Tell no one, or you may not live to reach Tomon Head. 1 hour before sunset. Do not fail me. With that, she was gone, the door closing firmly behind her. Egwene collapsed onto her bed with her hands on her knees. Nynaeve, she's Red Ajah. She can't know about Rand. If she did, she cannot know, Nynaeve agreed. I wish I knew why a Red wanted to help, or why she's willing to work with Moiraine. I'd have sworn neither of them would give the other water if she were dying of thirst. You think she's lying? She is Aes Sedai, Nynaeve said dryly. I'll wager my best silver pin against a blueberry that every word she said was true. But I wonder if we heard what we thought we did. The Black Ajah. Egwene shivered. There was no mistaking what she said about that, might help us. No mistaking, Nynaeve said. And she's forestalled us asking anyone for advice, because after that, who can we trust? The light help us indeed. Min and Elaine came bustling in, slamming the door behind them. Are you really going? Min asked, and Elaine gestured toward the tiny hole in the wall above Egwene's bed, saying, We listened from my room. We heard everything. Egwene exchanged glances with Nynaeve, wondering how much they'd overheard, and saw the same concern on Nynaeve's face. If they managed to cipher out about Rand... You have to keep this to yourselves, Nynaeve cautioned them. I suppose Leandrin has arranged permission from Shiriam for us to go, but even if she hasn't, even if they start searching the tower from top to bottom for us tomorrow, you mustn't say a word. Keep it to myself? Min said. No fear on that. I'm going with you. All I do all day is try to explain to one brown sister or another something I don't understand myself. I can't even go for a walk without the Amelin herself popping out and asking me to read whoever we see. When that woman asks you to do something, there doesn't seem to be any way out of it. I must have read half the white paper for her, but she always wants another demonstration. All I needed was an excuse to leave, and this is it. Her face wore a look of determination that allowed no argument. Egwene wondered why Min was so determined to go with them rather than simply leaving on her own. But before she had time to do more than wonder, Elaine said, I'm going too. Elaine, Nynaeve said gently, Egwene and I are the boy's kith from Emond's Field. You are the daughter heir of Andor. If you disappear from the White Tower, why, it could start a war. Mother wouldn't start a war with Tar Valon if they dried and salted me, which they may be trying to do. If you three can go off and have an adventure, you needn't think I'm going to stay here and wash dishes and scrub floors and have some accepted berating me because I didn't make the fire the exact shade of blue she wanted. Gawain will die from envy when he finds out. Elaine grinned and reached over to tug playfully at Egwene's hair. Besides, if you leave Rand lying about loose, I might have a chance to pick him up. I don't think either of us is going to have him, Egwene said sadly. Then we'll find whoever he does choose and make her life miserable. But he couldn't be fool enough to choose someone else when he could have one of us. Please smile, Egwene. I know he's yours. I just feel... She hesitated, searching for the word. Free. I've never had an adventure. I'll bet we won't either of us cry ourselves to sleep on an adventure. And if we do, we will make sure the Gleemen leave that part out. This is foolishness, Nynaeve said. We are going to Toman Head. You've heard the news and the rumors. It will be dangerous. You must stay here. I heard what Leandrin Sedai said about the Black Ajah, too. Elaine's voice dropped almost to a whisper at that name. How safe will I be here, if they are here? If Mother even suspected the Black Ajah really existed, she would pitch me into the middle of a battle to get me away from them. But, Elaine, there is only one way for you to stop me coming. That is to tell the Mistress of Novices. We will make a pretty picture, all three of us lined up in her study. All four of us. I don't think men would escape from something like this. So since you are not going to tell Shiriam Sedai, I'm coming too. Nynaeve threw up her hands. Perhaps you can say something to convince her, she told Min. Min had been leaning against the door, squinting at Elaine, and now she shook her head. I think she has to come as much as the rest of you, the rest of us. I can see the danger around all of you more clearly now. Not clearly enough to make it out, but I think it has something to do with you deciding to go. That's why it is clearer, because it is more certain. That's no reason for her to come, Nynaeve said, but Min shook her head again. She is linked to those boys as much as you or Egwene or me. She's part of it, Nynaeve, whatever it is. Part of the pattern, I suppose an Aes Sedai would say. Elaine seemed taken aback and interested, too. I am? What part, Min? I can't see it clearly. Min looked at the floor. Sometimes I wish I couldn't read people at all. Most people aren't satisfied with what I see anyway. If we are all going, Nynaeve said, then we had best be about making plans. However much she might argue beforehand, once a course of action had been decided, Nynaeve always went right to the practicalities, what they had to take with them, and how cold it would be by the time they reached Toman Head, and how they could get their horses from the stables without being stopped. Listening to her, Egwene could not help wondering what the danger was that Min saw for them, and what danger threatened Rand. She knew of only one danger that could threaten him, and it made her cold to think of it. Hold on, Rand. Hold on, you wool-headed idiot. I'll help you somehow. Chapter 39. Flight from the White Tower. Egwene and Elaine inclined their heads briefly to each group of women they passed as they made their way through the tower. It was a good thing there were so many women from outside in the tower today, Egwene thought. Too many for each to have an Aes Sedai or an accepted for escort. Alone or in small groups, garbed richly or poorly, in dress from half a dozen different lands, some still dusty from their journey to Tar Valon, they kept to themselves and waited their turn to ask their questions of the Aes Sedai or present their petitions. Some women, ladies or merchants' wives, had female servants with them. Even a few men had come with petitions, standing by themselves, looking unsure about being in the White Tower and eyeing everyone else uneasily. In the lead, Nynaeve kept her eyes purposefully ahead, her cloak swirling behind her, walking as if she knew where they were going, which she did, as long as no one stopped them, and had a perfect right to go there, which was a different matter altogether, of course. Dressed now in the clothes they had brought to Tar Valon, they certainly did not look like residents of the tower. Each had chosen her best dress that had a skirt divided for riding, and cloaks of fine wool, rich with embroidery. As long as they kept away from all who might recognize them, they had already dodged several who knew their faces. Egwene thought they might make it. This would do better for a turn in some lord's part than a ride to Toman Head, Nynaeve had said dryly as Egwene helped her with the buttons of a gray silk with thread of gold work and pearled flowers across the bosom and down the sleeves. But it may allow us to leave unnoticed. Now Egwene shifted her cloak and smoothed her own gold-embroidered green silk dress and glanced at Elaine, in blue slashed with cream, hoping Nynaeve had been right. So far, everyone had taken them for petitioners, nobles, or at least women of wealth, but it seemed that they should stand out. She was surprised to realize why. She felt uncomfortable in the fine dress after wearing a novice's plain white for the past few months. A little cluster of village women in stout, dark woolens dropped curtsies as they passed. Egwene glanced back at Min as soon as they were beyond. Min had kept her breeches and baggy man's shirt under a boy's brown cloak and coat, with an old wide-brimmed hat pulled down over her short hair. "One of us has to be the servant," she had said, laughing. "Women dressed the way you are always have at least one. You'll wish you had my breeches if we have to run." She was burdened with 4 sets of saddlebags bulging with warm clothes, for it would surely be winter before they returned. There were also packets of food pilfered from the kitchens, enough to last until they could buy more. "Are you sure I can't carry some of those, Min?" Egwene asked softly. "They're just awkward," Min said with a grin. "Not heavy." She seemed to think it was all a game, or else was pretending to think so. And people would be sure to wonder why a fine lady such as yourself was carrying her own saddlebags. "You can carry yours, and mine too if you want, once we—" Her grin vanished, and she whispered fiercely, "Aes Sedai!" Egwene whipped her eyes forward. An Aes Sedai with long, smooth black hair and aged ivory skin was coming toward them down the corridor, listening to a woman wearing rough farm clothes and a patched cloak. The Aes Sedai had not seen them yet, but Egwene recognized her. Takima, of the Brown Aja, who taught the history of the White Tower and Aes Sedai, and who could recognize one of her pupils at 100 paces. Nynaeve turned down a side hall without breaking stride, but there one of the accepted, a lanky woman with a permanent frown, hurried past them, hauling a red-faced novice by the ear. Egwene had to swallow before she could speak. "That was Irella and Els. Did they notice us?" She could not make herself look back to see. "No, Min said after a moment. All they saw was our clothes. Egwene let out a long, relieved breath, and heard one from Nynaeve, too. My heart may burst before we reach the stables, Elaine murmured. Is this what an adventure is like all the time, Egwene? Your heart in your mouth and your stomach in your feet? I suppose it is, Egwene said slowly. She found it hard to think that there had been a time when she had been eager to have an adventure, to do something dangerous and exciting like the people in the stories. Now she thought the exciting part was what you remembered when you looked back, and the stories left out a good deal of unpleasantness. She told Elaine as much. Still, the daughter heir said firmly, I have never had any real excitement before, and never likely to as long as Mother has any say in it, which she will until I take the throne myself. You two be quiet, Nynaeve said. They were alone in the hall for a change, with no one in sight in either direction. She pointed to a narrow flight of stairs going down. That should be what we want, if I haven't gotten turned around completely with all the twists and turns we've made. She took the stairs as if she were certain anyway, and the others followed. Surely enough, the small door at the bottom led out into the dusty yard of the south stable, where novices' horses were kept, for those who had them, until they had need of mounts again, which was generally not until they became accepted or were sent home. The gleaming bulk of the tower itself rose behind them. The tower grounds spread over a good many hides of land, with its own walls higher than some city walls. Nynaeve strode into the stable as if she owned it. It had a clean smell of hay and horse, and 2 long rows of stalls ran back into shadows barred with light from the vents above. For a wonder, shaggy Bella and Nynaeve's gray mare stood in stalls near the doors. Bella put her nose over the stall door and whickered softly to Egwene. There was only one groom in evidence, a pleasant-looking fellow with gray in his beard, chewing a straw. We will have our horses saddled, Nynaeve told him in her most commanding tone. Those two. Men, find your horse and Elaine's. Men dropped the saddlebags and drew Elaine deeper into the stables. The stableman frowned after them and slowly took the straw from his mouth. There must be some mistake, my lady. Those animals are ours, Nynaeve said firmly, folding her arms so that the serpent ring was obvious. You will settle them now. Egwene held her breath. It was a last-ditch plan that Nynaeve would try to pass as an Aes Sedai if they had difficulties with anyone who might actually accept her as one. No Aes Sedai or accepted would, of course, and probably not even a novice. But a stableman... The man blinked at Nynaeve's ring, then at her. I was told, too, he said at last, sounding unimpressed. One of the accepted and a novice. Wasn't nothing said about 4 of you. Egwene felt like laughing. Of course Liandrin would not have believed them able to get their horses by themselves. Nynaeve looked disappointed, and her voice sharpened. You trot those horses out and saddle them, or you'll have need of Liandrin's healing, if she will give it to you. The groom mouthed Liandrin's name, but one look at Nynaeve's face, and he saw to the horses with no more than a mutter or two, not loud enough for any but himself to hear. Min and Elaine came back with their own mounts just as he finished tightening the second girth. Min's was a tall, dust-colored gelding. Elaine's a bay mare with an arched neck. When they were mounted, Nynaeve addressed herself to the stableman again. No doubt you were told to keep this quiet, and that hasn't changed whether we are 2 or 200. If you think it has, think about what Liandrin will do if you talk what you were told to keep quiet. As they were riding out, Elaine tossed him a coin and murmured, For your trouble, good man. You have done well. Outside, she caught Egwene's eye and smiled. Mother says a stick and honey always work better than a stick alone. I hope we don't need either with the guards, Egwene said. I hope Liandrin spoke to them, too. At Tarloman's gate, though, piercing the tall south wall of the tower grounds, there was no telling if anyone had spoken to the guards or not. They waved the 4 women through with no more than a glance and a cursory bow. Guards were meant to keep out those who were dangerous. Apparently, these had no orders about keeping anyone in. A cool river breeze gave them an excuse to pull up the hoods of their cloaks as they rode slowly through the streets of the city. The ring of their horses' hooves on the paving stones was lost in the murmur of the crowds filling the streets and the music that came from some of the buildings they passed. People dressed in garments from every land, from the dark and somber mood of Kyrian to the bright, brilliant colors of the traveling people, and every style in between, split around the horsewomen like a river around a rock, but they still could not move at more than a slow walk. Egwene gave no attention to the fabulous towers with their sky-borne bridges, or the buildings that looked more like breaking waves or wind-sculpted cliffs, or fanciful shells than anything made from stone. Aes Sedai often went into the city, and in that crowd they could come face to face with one before they knew it. After a time, she realized the other women were keeping as close a watch as she, but she still felt more than a glimmer of relief when the Ogier Grove came into view. The great trees were now visible beyond the rooftops, their spreading tops 100 spans and more in the air. Towering oaks and elms, leather leaves and firs were dwarfed beneath them. A wall of sorts encompassed the grove, which was a good 2 miles across, but it was only an endless series of spiraling stone arches, each 5 spans high and twice as wide. By the outer side of the wall, carriages, carts, and people bustled along a street, while inside lay a wilderness of sorts. The grove had neither the tame look of a park, nor the complete haphazardness of the forest depths. Rather, it seemed to be the ideal of nature, as if this were the perfect woods, the most beautiful forest that could be. Some of the leaves had already begun to turn, and even the small swaths of orange and yellow and red among the green seemed to Egwene to be exactly the way autumn foliage should look. A few people strolled just inside the open arches, and no one looked twice when the 4 women rode in under the trees. The city was quickly lost to view, even the sounds of it softened, then blocked by the grove. In the space of 10 strides, they seemed to be miles from the nearest town. "The north end of the grove," she said, Nynaeve muttered, peering around. "There isn't any point of it further north than—" She cut off as 2 horses burst from a copse of black elder, a dark glossy mare with a rider, and a lightly laden pack-horse. The dark mare reared, pawing the air as Liandrin reined her harshly. The Aes Sedai's face wore fury like a mask. "I told you not to tell anyone of this. Not anyone." Egwene noticed pole lanterns on the pack-horse and thought it odd. "These are friends," Nynaeve began, her back stiffening, but Elaine broke in on her. "Forgive us, Liandrin," said I. "They did not tell us. We overheard. We did not mean to listen to anything we should not have, but we did overhear. And we want to help Rand al'Thor, too. And the other boys, of course," she added quickly. Liandrin peered at Elaine and Min. The late afternoon sunlight slanting through the branches shadowed their faces beneath the hoods of their cloaks. "So," she said finally, still watching those 2, "I have made arrangements for you to be taken care of, but as you are here, you are here. 4 can make this journey as well as 2. "Taken care of, Liandrin Sedai," Elaine said. "I do not understand." "Child, you and that other are known as friends of these 2. Do you not think that there are those who would question you when they are found to be gone? Do you believe the Black Ajah would be gentle with you just because you are heir to a throne? Had you remained in the White Tower, you might not have lived the night." That silenced them all for a moment, but Liandrin wheeled her horse and called, "Follow me." The Aes Sedai led them deeper into the grove until they came to a tall fence of stout ironwork, topped with a hedge of razor-sharp spikes. Curving slightly as if it enclosed a large area, the fence ran out of sight among the trees to left and right. There was a gate in the fence secured with a big lock. Liandrin unfastened this with a large key she produced from her cloak, motioned them through, then relocked it behind them and rode on ahead immediately. A squirrel chittered at them from a branch overhead, and from somewhere came the sharp drumming of a woodpecker. "Where are we going?" Nynaeve demanded. Liandrin did not answer, and Nynaeve looked angrily at the others. "Why are we just riding deeper into these woods? We have to cross a bridge or else take ship if we're going to leave Tarvalin, and there isn't any bridge or ship in. There is this, Leandrin announced. The fence. It keeps away those who might harm themselves, but we have a need this day. What she gestured to was a tall, thick slab of what seemed to be stone, standing on edge, one side carved intricately in vines and leaves. Egwene's throat tightened. Suddenly she knew why Leandrin had brought lanterns, and she did not like what she knew. She heard Nynaeve whisper, "A waygate." They both remembered the ways all too well. We did it once, she told herself as much as Nynaeve. We can do it again. If Rand and the others need us, we have to help them. That's all there is to it. Is that really... Min began in a choked voice and could not finish. A waygate, Elaine breathed. I did not think the ways could be used any longer. At least I did not think their use was allowed. Leandrin had already dismounted and plucked the trefoil of Endosora leaf out of the carving. Like two huge doors woven of living vines, the gates were swinging open, revealing what appeared to be a dull, silvery mirror that gave their reflections back dimly. You do not have to come, Leandrin said. You can wait here for me, safely enclosed by the fence until I come for you. Or perhaps the Black Ajah will find you before anyone else. Her smile was not pleasant. Behind her, the waygate came open to its fullest and stopped. I did not say I wouldn't come, Elaine said, but she gave the shadowed woods a lingering look. If we are going to do this, Min said hoarsely, then let's do it. She was staring at the waygate, and Egwene thought she heard her mutter, I might burn you, Randall for. I must go last, Leandrin said. All of you in. I will follow. She was eyeing the woods now, too, as if she thought someone might be following them. Quickly! Quickly! Egwene did not know what Leandrin expected to see, but if anyone at all came, they would probably stop them from using the waygate. Rand, you wool-headed idiot, she thought. Why can't you just once get yourself into some kind of trouble that doesn't force me to act like the heroine in the story? She dug her heels into Bella's flanks, and the shaggy mare, rested from too much time in a stable, leaped forward. Slowly, Nynaeve shouted, but it was too late. Egwene and Bella surged toward their own dull reflections. Two shaggy horses' touched noses appeared to flow into each other. Then Egwene was merging into her own image with an icy shock. Time seemed to stretch out, as if the cold crept over her by the width of one hair at a time, and every hair took minutes. Suddenly, Bella was stumbling in pitch blackness, moving so fast the mare almost pitched over on her head. She caught herself and stood trembling as Egwene dismounted hurriedly, feeling the mare's legs in the dark to see if she had been hurt. She was almost glad of the dark, to hide her crimson face. She knew that time as well as distance were different the other side of a waygate. She had moved before thinking. There was only the blackness around her in every direction, except for the rectangle of the open waygate, like a window of smoked glass when seen from this side. It let no light in, the black seemed to press right up against it, but through it Egwene could see the others, moving by the slowest increments like figures in a nightmare. Nynaeve was insisting on handing around the pole lanterns and lighting them. Leandrin was acceding with a bad grace, apparently insisting on speed. When Nynaeve came through the waygate, leading her gray mare slowly, ever so slowly, Egwene almost ran to hug her, and at least half of her feeling was for the lantern Nynaeve carried. The lantern made a smaller pool of light than it should have. The darkness pressed against the light, trying to force it back into the lantern, but Egwene had begun to feel that darkness pressing against her, as if it had weight. Instead, she contented herself with saying, Bella's all right, and I did not break my neck the way I deserved to. Once there had been light along the ways before the taint on the power with which they had first been made, the taint of the Dark One on Saidin, had begun to corrupt them. Nynaeve thrust the pole of the lantern into her hands and turned to pull another from under her saddle girth. As long as you know you deserve to, she murmured, then you didn't deserve to. Suddenly she chuckled. Sometimes I think it was sayings like that more than anything else that created the title of wisdom. Well, here's another. You break your neck and I'll see it mended just so I can break it again. It was said lightly, and Egwene found herself laughing too, until she recalled where she was. Nynaeve's amusement did not last long either. Min and Elaine came through the waygate hesitantly, leading their horses and carrying lanterns, obviously expecting to find monsters waiting at the least. They looked relieved at first to find nothing but darkness, but the oppressiveness of it soon had them shifting nervously from foot to foot. Leandrin replaced the Avendosora leaf and rode through the closing waygate, leading the packhorse. Leandrin did not wait for the gate to finish closing, but tossed the lead line of the packhorse to Min without a word, and started along a white line, dimly made out by the light of her lantern, leading into the ways. The floor seemed to be stone, eaten and pitted by acid. Egwene scrambled hurriedly onto Bella's back, but she was no quicker to follow the Aes Sedai than anyone else. There seemed to be nothing in the world except the rough floor under the horses' hooves. Straight as an arrow, the white line led through the dark to a large stone slab covered with Ogier script inlaid in silver. The same pocket that marked the floor also broke the script in places. "A guiding," Elaine murmured, twisting in her saddle to look around uneasily. "Elida taught me a little about the ways. She would not say much. Not enough," she added glumly, "or maybe too much." Calmly, Leandrin compared the guiding with a parchment, then stuffed it back into a pocket of her cloak before Egwene could get a look. Their lantern's light stopped abruptly rather than fading out at the edges, but it was enough for Egwene to see a thick stone balustrade eaten away in places as the Aes Sedai led them away from the guiding. An island, Elaine called it. The darkness made judging the island's size difficult, but Egwene thought it might be 100 paces across. Stone bridges and ramps pierced the balustrade, each with a stone post beside it marked with a single line in Ogier script. The bridges seemed to arch out into nothing. The ramps led up or down. It was impossible to see more than the beginning of any of them as they rode past. Pausing only to eye the stone posts, Leandrin took a ramp that led down, and quickly there was nothing but the ramp and the darkness. A dampening silence hung over everything. Egwene had the feeling that even the clatter of the horses' hooves on the rough stone did not travel very far beyond the light. Down and down the ramp ran, curving back on itself, until it reached another island, with its broken balustrade between bridges and ramps, its guiding that Leandrin compared with her parchment. The island seemed like solid stone, just as the first one had. Egwene wished she was not sure that the first island was directly over their heads. Nynaeve spoke up suddenly, voicing Egwene's thoughts. Her voice sounded steady, but she paused to swallow in the middle of it. It might be," Elaine said faintly. Her eyes rolled upwards and quickly dropped again. "Elida says the rules of nature do not hold in the ways, at least not the outside." Min muttered, then raised her voice. "How long do you mean us to stay in here?" The eyes of the blade swung as she turned to the "Until I take you out," she said flatly. "The more you bother me, the longer that will be." She bent back to studying the parchment and the guiding. Egwene and the others fell silent. Leandrin pushed on from guiding to guiding, by ramps and bridges that seemed to run unsupported through the endless dark. The Aes Sedai paid very little heed to the rest of them, and Egwene found herself wondering whether Leandrin would turn back to search if one of them fell behind. The others perhaps had the same thought, for they all rode bunched tightly on the dark mare's heels. Egwene was surprised to realize that she still felt the attraction of Sandor, both the presence of the female source and the desire to touch it, to channel it. Somehow she had thought the shadow's taint on the waves would hide it from her. She could sense that taint after a fashion. It was faint and had nothing to do with Saidar, but she was sure that reaching for the true source here would be like baring her arm to foul, greasy smoke in order to reach a clean cup. Whatever she did would be tainted. For the first time in weeks, she had no trouble at all in resisting the attraction of Saidar. It was well into what would have been night in the world outside the ways when, on an island, Leandrin abruptly dismounted and announced that they would halt for supper and sleep, and that there was food on the pack horse. "Parcel it out," she said, not bothering to assign the task. "It will take us the better part of 2 days to my head. I would not have you hungry if you were too foolish not to include yourselves." Briskly she unsaddled and hobbled her mare, but then she sat down on her saddle and waited for one of them to bring her something to eat. Elaine took Leandrin her flatbread and cheese. The Aes Sedai made it obvious that she did not want their company, so the rest of them ate their bread and cheese a little apart from her, sitting on their saddles drawn close together. The darkness beyond their lanterns made a poor sauce. After a time, Egwene said, "Leandrin Sedai, what if we encounter the Black Wind?" Men mouthed the word questioningly, but Elaine gave a squeak. "Moiraine Sedai said it could not be killed or even hurt very much, and I can feel the taint on this place waiting to twist anything we do with the power." "You will not so much as think of the source unless I tell you to," Leandrin said sharply. "Why, if one such as you tried to channel here in the ways, you might well go as mad as a man. You have not the training to deal with the taint of those men who made this. If the Black Wind appears, I will deal with it." She pursed her lips, studying a lump of white cheese. "Moiraine does not know so much as she thinks." She popped the cheese into her mouth with a smile. "I do not like her," Egwene muttered, low enough to make sure the Aes Sedai could not hear. "If Moiraine can work with her," Nynaeve said quietly, "so can we. Not that I like Moiraine any better than I do Leandrin, but if they're meddling with Rand and the others again—" She fell silent, hitching her cloak up. The darkness was not cold, but it seemed as if it should be. "What is this Black Wind?" Min asked. When Elaine had explained, with a great deal of what Elida had said and what her mother had said, Min sighed. "The pattern has a great deal to answer for. I don't know that any man is worth..." "You did not have to come," Egwene reminded her. "You could have gone at any time. No one would have tried to stop you leaving the tower." "Oh, I could have wandered off," Min said wryly. "As easily as you or Elaine. The pattern doesn't much care what we want. Egwene, what if, after all you are going through for him, Rand doesn't marry you? What if he marries some woman you've never seen before? Or Elaine? Or me? What then?" Elaine chortled. "Mother would never approve." Egwene was silent for a time. Rand might not live to marry anyone, and if he did, she could not imagine Rand hurting anyone. Not even after he's gone mad. There had to be some way to stop that, some way to change it. Aes Sedai knew so much, could do so much. If they could stop it, why don't they? The only answer was because they could not, and that was not the one she wanted. She tried to put lightness in her voice. "I don't suppose I will marry him. Aes Sedai seldom do marry, you know. But I would not set my heart on him if I were you, or you, Elaine. I do not think..." Her voice caught, and she coughed to cover it. "I do not think he will ever marry. But if he does, I wish well to whoever ends up with him, even one of you." She thought she sounded as if she meant it. "He is stubborn as a mule and wrong-headed to a fault, but he is gentle." Her voice shook, but she managed to turn the quaver into a laugh. "However much you say you do not care," Elaine said, "I think you'd approve less than Mother would. He is interesting, Egwene. More interesting than any man I've ever met, even if he is a shepherd. If you are silly enough to throw him away, you will have only yourself to blame if I decide to face down you and Mother both. It would not be the first time the Prince of Andor had no title before he wed. But you won't be that silly, so don't try to pretend you will. No doubt you will choose the green Ajah and make him one of your warders. The only greens I know with only one warder are married to them." Egwene made herself go along with it, saying if she did become a green, she would have 10 warders. Min watched her, frowning, and Nynaeve watched Min thoughtfully. They all fell silent by the time they changed into more suitable clothes for traveling from their saddlebags. It was not easy keeping spirits in this place. Sleep came slowly to Egwene, fitfully, and it was filled with bad dreams. She did not dream of Rand, but of the man whose eyes were on fire. His face was not masked this time, and it was horrible with almost healed burns. He only looked at her and laughed, but that was worse than the dreams that followed. The dreams of being lost in the ways forever, the ones where the black wind was chasing her. She was grateful when the toe of Leandrin's riding boot dug into her ribs to waken her. She felt as if she had not slept at all. Leandrin pushed them hard through the next day, or went past for day, with only lanterns for a sun, not letting them stop for sleep until they were swaying in their saddles. Stone made a hard bed, but Leandrin roused them ruthlessly after a few hours, hardly waiting for them to mount before riding on. Ramps and bridges, islands and guidings. Egwene saw so many of them in that pitch dark that she lost count. She had long since lost any count of hours or of days. Leandrin allowed only brief halts to eat and rest the horses, and the darkness weighed down on their shoulders. They slumped in their saddles like sacks of grain, except for Leandrin. The Aes Sedai seemed unaffected by tiredness or the dark. She was as fresh as she had been back in the White Tower, and as cold. She would not let anyone glimpse the parchment she compared to the guidings, stuffing it away with a curt, "It is nothing you would understand," when Nynaeve asked. And then, while Egwene blinked wearily, Leandrin was riding away from a guiding, not toward another bridge or ramp, but down a pitted white line that led off into the darkness. Egwene stared at her friends, and then they all hurried to follow. Ahead, by the light of her lantern, the Aes Sedai was already removing the Avendasora leaf from the carvings on a waygate. "We are here," Leandrin said, smiling. "I have brought you at last to where you must go." Chapter 40. Damani. Egwene dismounted as the waygate opened, and when...
There we go. That's a good stopping point. All right, everyone. Have a good night, Fire. I'm gonna call Into This Life for tonight. I want to thank everyone for stopping by. Everyone who keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all support. Until next time, everyone. Y'all stay safe out there.